Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining in today's virtual conference focusing on the events, the invisible, invincible industry. I'm Diane Devitt. I've been personally involved in events throughout my career and continue to teach events at NYU Tisch Center for Hospitality and Tourism. My heart and prayers go out to all of you, friends and family who were affected by the virus, and I applaud you for just continuing to do what we can do, which is learning facts and moving on. In today's conference, we're focusing on event professionals, whether you're corporate, marketing, independent, or the industry at large. Because in less than what seems like a nanosecond, live and experiential gatherings come to a halt with everyone everywhere. They're on hold right now. And we quickly found a way to have the safety of seeing one another through digital platforms, which has become an option. We're evolving like television did not so long ago, which changed our viewing habits, as virtual and physical will once again change our meeting habits. The events industry is an industry of invincible logistical planners. And just one moment here. People who are helping the front lines in catering and trucking, in drapes, in setting up hospitals. They're using their resources everywhere to help. Because events capture that one moment in time like Whitney Houston spoke about, and they will continue to do so when the hold button is released. Events have united people since the beginning of time, and make no mistake, I know that what's in us right now and the resolve that we have to meet again will come forward and be stronger than ever. So today I want to thank our sponsors. Excuse me, I want to thank Meeting Jobs and John Penfold. Thank them for their continuing support. Meeting you, Jim Spellos, thank you for your technical expertise and for powering today's session. Meeting Evolution, Rob Wilson. Meeting Sites Resource, Jennifer Brown. And thank you, Shelley Williams and the Hard Rock Hotel in Atlantic City for your support. We also today are recognizing the Search Foundation. The Search Foundation was established to help event professionals in the special events industry, special events assistance, relief, and crisis help. You'll get more information on Search in the resource guide following the program. The link for today's program will be available for 1 week. I also want to specially thank Harvey Grotsky, who's the publisher of Coastal Communications Corporation. Harvey's an unwavering supporter. Coastal is a leading publishing company in the industry since 1975. They are strongly committed to supporting our industry through this COVID crisis. Harvey's team continues to publish their 3 national magazines, Corporate and Incentive Travel, Association Conventions and Facilities, and the Insurance and Financials Meeting Management. Each of them continues to provide the latest magazine articles and information that's valuable to all of you. So thank you, Harvey and David, for your help. With us today are speakers who will share their valuable information and insight for you and your colleagues. Back again for their expertise and insight are Jonathan Howe. Jonathan is an iconic figurehead and legal expert in the meetings industry and founder of Howe & Hutton. Jonathan will share up-to-date information on legal contracts and other murky details that we're all working through. Trina Rosen. Trina continues to bring her extensive industry in the financial area. Today she's focusing on corporate and some unemployment, but Trina was gracious enough to make a separate 1.5 hour video yesterday focusing on the independent planner step by step, what the latest is and how you can apply for the help that is out there. So Trina, thank you. We also welcome Larry Cosio. Larry is an insurance expert with over 35 years experience. He promises me he's going to help us learn a little bit about insurance, what the basics are and what the critical questions are that are on all of our minds moving forward. With Larry, we are joined by Mahays Somalia. Mahays is the former president of Farmers Insurance and the current CEO of Go West Creative. Thank you, Mahays. Gary Pagano. Gary is a friend, and Gary and I have known each other a long time. Gary, VP of Viacom CBS Special Events. Gary will share his case study of how his team had to pivot into choices for their senior management regarding their programs for the year and how the process went with that whole situation. With us is a discussion with three industry professionals: David Fischette, President and CEO, Chief Creative of Go West Creative. David started a phone call when COVID first descended upon us, and he's up to over 30 companies, which you see in the background slide, on a weekly call sharing their situation and the latest information from where they sit. So thank you, David. Samantha Staples is an expert in events based in Austin, Texas. Samantha is the liaison with the South by Southwest event, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Sam works with not only the city of Austin, but she also works with the festival, so she's going to share what their situation was and what the outcome is. We're also going to hear from Maggie Glasser. Maggie is our resident millennial, and Maggie began in this industry. She's worked for MGM Productions and went on to Tom Kehoe in Chicago, and now she's on her own. She picked this time to go on her own. So we're going to hear from Maggie and how she communicates to millennials at this time. So thank you to all of our speakers. And on a high note, we're also joined by Andy Sharp. Andy is the CEO of Song Division. He is joined by Angus Clark, who is the general manager of Song. Andy is going to share some insight on the power of music as a universal healer to all of us, and we have a special surprise for you at the end of the event. So thank you all for that. Following the program today, we're going to have an open chat room, breakout rooms for you to share your thoughts, your comments, have a conversation. And we're looking forward to your participation in that. It's optional, but we want you to know that it's going to be offered because we appreciate your participation. You'll also receive an extensive resource guide with the Search Foundation and with information on what's called the Event Industry Alliance. The Event Industry Alliance is a petition that has been circulating online, and it's all about the power of unity and growing together and eventually taking that power to the powers that be so that we can get the help that we need. So thank you to the Alliance for starting that. With that said, we're ready to start our program. Thank you again for joining us. And I'd like to welcome Jonathan Howe. Jim, are we ready to go? Jonathan?
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is, I guess, is the third or fourth event that we have done relative to what's happening out there today. Every morning I wake up with a little bit of a surprise as to where we are. The president announced by way of Twitter last night, apparently a immigration hold, no new visas being issued, etc., etc. What impact this will have on your programs, you need to evaluate for yourself. But the key element, we now have sort of conflicting ideas as to when we're going to get back to where we want to be. And the Center for Disease Control issued several days ago its guidelines for opening up America again. I always wondered whether maybe it would be opening America up again, but be that as it may. The key element, I think, right now that we all have to pay attention to is one more time taking a look at the crucial dates as to your programs as they're coming along, as to when you have to make a decision as to a go and a no-go. The real element here that's so of big concern is, number one, at the top of your list, what are the things that are in the best interest of your attendees, the best interest of the people who are going to be supporting that event, and whether the event sponsors and the like are still going to be there, because the economic reason for them being there probably has changed. And as we look at this, at least once a week, I gather all my attorneys together for a Zoom meeting. And our meeting took place this morning, and we discussed exactly what's going on. Of key concern in that discussion were issues of insurance. Are our clients covered? Do they have their policies? A key element in that is you've got to look beyond the cancellation provisions of your special policies. You need to look at all of your comprehensive general liability and the rest of that. And I'm sure that Larry's going to address that right after I'm done, and certainly will do a better job than I just did as to how this all plays out. The key element, though, is we have lots of resources out there, and we're not really sure how to tap into those resources. Now, more than ever, we need to take advantage of those people who we've been working with over the years, our banker, our consultants, our lawyer, our accountant, our insurance broker, just to see what might be there for our benefit. Trina will talk about the opportunities that perhaps, should the Democrats and the Republicans ever manage to get together relative to extending the payroll protection program and the like, and what that may mean to you, and more importantly, in some respects, what it might mean to your customers who suddenly have found themselves in a certain degree of financial displeasure. When I mentioned the opening up America again, it went through a phases of 3. But the first aspect of it, what are the criteria before you even get to the phase? So the proposed state or regional criteria, and I might mention I just watched Governor Cuomo, he might like to be president, Governor Cuomo of New York's press conference. I think he does a pretty good job every day of sort of putting it in real talk and straight talk of how things are done. But he said New York now is going to begin to look at regional openings. Every state is different. Every locality is different. In Georgia, for example, the governor is trying to open up the state, but the mayor of Atlanta this morning went online and said, well, I don't agree with the governor. We're going to be a little bit more strict than what's there. So we have all elements and all areas of government that we need to be concerned with as we make our decisions in going forward. The demographics of your group are so important. Do you have people who are at risk? And that's one of the criteria that is introduced in the proposed phased approach to reopening America. And for example, we have a lot of individuals, I might include myself in that, as to who would be considered to be at risk. So your age matters, your pre-existing conditions matter, your past medical history matter, and those all become a concern that we need to address. It may not get you out of the contract, but it does make you a sensitive person to the type of people who are going to be coming to your program, your events. The key element here, let me stress again, number one on everybody's agenda, what is going to be in the best interest of the safety and health of the people who are going to be coming to my event or would like to come to my event. The second element is the people who have to serve that event, the people who have to provide the wherewithal to make that event successful. And so we put a little bit of a burden back on the venue, back on the vendor, as to what they can do. Can they really meet all of the obligations under your contract to provide the services, the rooms, the amenities that are so important to the success of your event? Ask that question. So often when we're talking to people on the other side, so to speak, you ask them, how prepared are you to deliver? Just like they're going to ask you, how prepared are you to deliver? And I think we're beginning to find some degree of middle ground. We're now out to canceling programs through the end of June. We're looking at July, August, and September. A lot of this is going to be matched by what's going on in the industry. For example, I live in Chicago. they have just canceled some of the major galas and musical events through the end of May that would have occurred in Chicago. Stay tuned. They'll be canceling those in June and July, I am sure, as well. We have a whole bunch of items that come into play. With the immigration delay, we need to ask ourselves, how many people do we have who might be affected? More importantly, also, is the number of people who are here in the United States who may have green cards that are expiring, and what is that going to mean relative to their ability to provide services to our programs overall? So we need to look at that. We also need to look at what's required for the phasing and the opening of 1, 2, or 3. But you got to look first at what the criteria are. And there has to be a downward trajectory of documented cases over a period of time, over a 14-day period. We have to see that hospitals are able to treat patients without crisis care requirements. In other words, what about those who might have been injured in an automobile accident, tripped or fell in their house, need a leg set, or whatever it might be? How capable are those health or hospitals going to be to take care of those? And are we seeing a downward trajectory in COVID-19 and really any kind of influenza-like illness? Those are part of the criteria. And to get all of the details on this, I recommend and suggest to you, you go to the Center of Disease Control website and go and look at Opening Up America Again category at that website. It'll give you a lot of information. But then we get down to phase 1 and we get down to some of the other, before we get there, as to the criteria as to what we have to have. One of the requirements for employers, social distancing and protective equipment as the need may be. Temperature checks, sanitation requirements, the use and disinfection of various areas within your office space, your workplace, the convention space. How many hotels, how many venues are really going to have disinfection take place to the satisfaction of health officials in order for them to reopen or to be open at all? Business travel, the recommendation is non-essential business travel should not take place. Well, is your meeting, your event, essential or is it non-essential? Now, that decision is going to be made on a subjective way by people who are going to attend. For a lot of people, they're going to say, well, from my standpoint, it may be essential, but for me personally, because of where I fall within the order of infection potential and the like, I'm not going. I've got to make that personal decision. So we're saying to clients as well, take a survey of those who might be attending your program. Are they still prepared to come? Your sponsors, your exhibitors, the people you rely on to provide the financial well-worth, good aspect of it becomes so important. So I think what we're looking at right now is a total evaluation. Really, we've been looking at that from the beginning of this whole thing. I think we're now into about the end of the 4th month of having to contest with this. Please, please, please pull all your information together, develop what is your worst case, make those decisions as to when you have to pull the plug, if you're going to pull the plug, that's in the best interest of all concerned. And remember also that wherever you're going, it may be that that location is open, but the people who are coming there may not be able to get in because they don't have the capacity of being able to leave. Sorry for a little slip there. But here's what I think, Diane, overall. We're dealing with a lot of important decisions, but the key element is what are the bases for you making those decisions?
Right.
And so what we're going to look at is your schedule, the time you have to make that decision, and then what is the support for making that decision? How far out are we going to go with this? The longer you can wait until you have to make that decision, obviously the better. But having said that, in some situations, what you're going to be looking at is conditions may change. It may open up. But if you go to the CDC guidelines, you'll see that the prospect of you being able to pull off an event with certain governors and localities installing a rule, we can have gatherings, but they can't be more than 10, maybe 50 people. What's the aspect of your event being successful under those conditions?
Right.
So Diane, do we have any questions?
Yes, can you hear me, John?
I hear you.
Okay, yes, so here's the question. I'll try to paraphrase it a little bit, but just to what you're saying, if this goes into a phase situation, and then we've got different jurisdiction from a city and a state, right? You're booking an event in a city, and then the people who are invited can't get there. So there's that confusion. So to the event company is if an independent contractor is hired by a planning company and they go out of business or they cancel the event, what recourse is there? Or the event is canceled, yeah.
Well, I guess we go back to the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic is, what, if anything, does the contract provide between the parties? If you have a volunteer sign-up type of situation where somebody says, well, I'm coming to your event, here's my money, you cancel the event, what obligation you have back to them as to refunding the money?
Right.
Similarly, with the property or the venue, what obligation do you have or they have to get back to you with a refund?
Right, and then you have the situation too, someone's mentioning about, because many events are obviously held in hotels. So with the uncertainty of hotels opening or not, how do you then, I don't know if we lost you, John, you still hear me?
I'm here.
Yeah, okay, so with the uncertainty in a hotel, or if a hotel goes bankrupt and the planner or the event planner is involved, what recourse do they have, or is there any protection they can take now once a contract is written? Is there any?
Well, one thing that's really important is that, as you suggest, and the question suggests, you postpone your program, let's say, until 2021, and you have a substantial deposit that's been left with the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Number one recommendation, get it back. All of it. Now, if they're not prepared to give it back to you, you may want to set up an escrow for the money that's on deposit. And that somewhat protects you and the property should something happen on either side financially, such as a bankruptcy. If it's an escrow,
Mm-hmm.
the escrow determines what are the terms and conditions upon which that money would be released. And so if the hotel is no longer open or is in bankruptcy, the hotel can't perform.
Right.
That money goes back to you.
Right.
So you need to protect the asset, the money that you have on deposit overall.
Okay, if you have an event in October and want to start looking at options to move it, but the hotel isn't willing to negotiate, what is your advice?
Well, I would go back to the hotel and say, okay, you want us to go forward with our event in October. What sayeth if you'll give me an affirmation that the hotel will be open, that all of your facilities will be there, that yours will be fully staffed, that everything that's supposed to happen pursuant to the contract will be in place. You'll be able to do the setups, the teardowns, and everything else, and that you're going to help me, assure me rather, that you're going to be able to do that.
Right. Now,
that the hotel is going to say, I can't do that. So
Right.
then you go back to the hotel and say, or to the venue and say, okay, if you can't do that, you're asking me to do that on my side. Let's see what we can do to make this work for both sides. A lot of times I say, I've been a proponent against the concept of win-win. We're partnership agreements.
Yes.
We want to be able to make it happen, but with the partnership, you share in risk and reward. And right now we're doing a lot of sharing of risk.
And that's very good, because the other comment that just came in here is, I'm having to reschedule my July event and December is being offered. I'm just not certain if it's doable, but want to be a good partner and rebook in the same year.
Well, again, you have the risk of maybe it won't be COVID-19. It might be the son or daughter of COVID. It might be called something else.
Right.
And if you listen to the CDC and Dr. Fauci, his concern is that we may be able to get out of this particular syndrome, but it may come back. And we're going to see with some of these states which are opening up early, what kind of return there is of people then watching that curve go back up as opposed to coming back down. So a lot of people say, well, we were looking for a V curve where it goes all the way down, then suddenly accelerates. What a lot of people are saying today, it's going to be a W. It'll go down, go up, and then go back down. So we've got to be very careful. And one of the concerns I have, and I advise clients on this, you got to read the contract as amended as to what that really means to you.
Right.
And are you still protected should we have that kind of incident of the W as opposed to the V kind of access? The key element here is that we're seeing in some of the contracts that you will see an exclusion made in the force majeure for an infectious disease. And so the key element here, you got to protect yourself, read the fine print. And remember, anytime you make a change in a contract that exists, it has a ripple effect. And you need to really concern yourself with what is the ripple effect in those other 28 pages of the contract.
Yeah, and I know in all of our previous events, John, you've always brought up the relationship factor, and I think that's critical in this, that you said it's not a win-win, it's about partnership. Venue hotel contract cancellation date impacts the timeline of when to make the decision on whether or not to cancel the event later this year. Our event is in late September, but our date to cancel with a minimum penalty, $35K, was due last month. We were able to negotiate a decision date until June. So again, I think this is a case by case, as you said, John.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Here's the concern too I have. It's a relationship business. Part of the problem right now is the person you had a relationship with has been furloughed or has been laid off. And so what we need to be concerned about is finding out who has the opportunity to make the decision. And one of the big concerns I've had over the last several years, in hotels today, in corporations today, the empowerment given to the person on the front line of negotiating has been taken away. I look at this as that the sales manager, the director of sales, the general manager, they're accountable to that person who's in the sub-basement of the hotel with a green eye shade called the revenue manager. And the revenue manager is going to say yay or nay as to what's going to go on. So we have to look very carefully there. On corporate side, we have the director of procurement. And so all decisions there may go to the director of procurement. Now, what's the revenue manager's role in life? Maximize the revenue.
Right.
What's the director of procurement's role in life? Minimize the expense. And so you have this conflict. I've said this before, but if I were going to do a hospitality industry fundraising event, I would have a caged fight. I put a director of procurement on one side, a revenue manager on the other side. They would go at each other, and everybody in the audience would cheer on, hoping they'd kill each other off.
Right.
And,
Well,
and
you know, yeah, and they probably would.
It's just that fact.
Yeah, they probably would, John. You know what it is like the thing is, the hotels play such a big role, obviously, and for all of us, right? This is where events are held, and hotels basically dictate so much in the industry. I mean, we have one person, you know, just commenting here, and I know we've been through this so much about COVID being included in the force majeure. Any quick comment on that because of time,
Sure.
but just to
I
clarify
would not put COVID in there by name because it may not be COVID the next time around.
Right.
What I would put in there is a broad-based force majeure clause. And force majeure clauses, as we've talked about before, are really misunderstood by a lot of people, including lawyers. The key element is what is going to allow you to be excused from performance because of something you may have some control over, but it makes it impossible or makes it undesirable for you to be able to go forward with the program. And so the key we want to look at is look at your group. What are the things that are going to impact upon their ability, their desire to actually come to and participate in the program? And in a lot of situations, you may be doing a type of program that appeals to people in, the upper C-level type of category. You know those are going to be people who are older, and they are going to be the people who are going to be a little bit concerned. They may be a group of people, especially we have certain groups which are made up of people specifically within a certain challenge medical class, survivors of cancer or whatever.
Right.
Those people, as we know, based upon what the CDC is saying, are part of that criteria as to people who should be very careful in what type of event they participate in. And then the social distancing, then the mask use, et cetera, all come into play. And so my real concern here is I got to look at what your group is, what the expectations are, what is the purpose. And in a lot of these cases, we're able to cancel the meeting out because there's what I call a frustration of purpose for purposes of being able to go forward with the program. Important to put in your contract with any venue is why are you holding the meeting?
Right.
What is the proposition that makes it desirable for people to come to your program? And if that purpose is frustrated, that's a pretty good reason to get out of the contract, or at least have a defense to getting out of the contract.
Right. And as you said many times before, John, it's a case by case. And I know you're not here to give specific advice because everything is so subject to interpretation. But one other question before we lose you for the day, for this time is, and it's just more of a comment, is someone is saying the hotel is, in another question, a different meeting, hotel is willing to move us to 221, but wants to charge the full cancellation amount of expected revenue. They will only apply 25% to the future contract. And is this standard and fair? Is what should I do?
I will tell you, based upon our conversations and what my experience is with all of us in our firm, is that we insist on getting all of it back, or maybe we'll leave a percentage behind, but we want credit against that for the future meeting that we're booking. Now, if we don't book it or don't fulfill it, that's a whole different story. Again, we got to look at what the language of the contract is going to provide. But I think from this standpoint, bear this in mind too. I've made this comment before. There's about $4 to $6 billion of debt that's going to be coming due here in the next couple of months, which is with hotels and the hospitality sector. Those properties don't have a cash flow right now.
Right.
So they're desperate to be able to find how are they going to meet their obligations relative to the debt obligations they have. So in some respects, the hotels are going to scramble to get every last penny that they can get in order to cover their debt because they don't have the cash flow right now. So that's an economic thing. But from your standpoint, you want to be protected. So we're going to look at back to the escrow, back to getting the refund of the deposits that you have made. And that becomes important. The key element here is you've got to protect your financial interest because you got to bear this in mind. The other side wants to protect its financial interest, but their chance of not being able to protect yours is pretty high at this moment.
Yes, and John, excellent point. And for all the events people and all the event companies, we all have to read the fine print and make sure we protect ourselves. And if we have to put and negotiate, addendums and issues that are going to protect us in the future, that's our responsibility moving forward. And
absolutely.
Right? Because again, like some people are commenting how, they had to rebook 5 conferences in the last few weeks. It's all about negotiations and hotel revenue. I mean, none of us I'm going to speak for everyone. None of us want to see a hotel go out of business because of lack of cash flow. But also, we don't want to just be penalized either without
Well,
some.
we don't want to go out of business either, and that's the other side of the coin. And I think Trina will talk a little bit about the economics and some of the aspects of protecting yourself financially. But the key element right now is this is one of those, I say risk reward. We're all sharing in risk, and the key element is how much risk can we sustain realistically, and how much risk can the other side sustain realistically. We're not in the new norm. We're in what I'd like to call the new reality. It ain't going to be a norm. It's going to be dependent upon everything we look at and how it plays one-on-one, venue to planner, planner to attendee, vendor to employee, et cetera, et cetera. We have a whole food chain here that we have to pay attention to. And all of the impact, the ripple effect there is incredible, as we're seeing with layoffs and the like. And how many of those people, if I'm a housekeeper at a hotel, I'm making $12.50 an hour, and I get an opportunity to go work for Walmart or Federal Express or Amazon at $17.50 an hour, I'm going to go there. And what's going to convince me to go back to getting $12.50 an hour to go back to the hotel? So staffing the opportunity for the properties, the venues, to meet their obligation, they're really challenged.
Yeah, they're very challenged. Well,
you know what, John? Tremendous economic impact.
Yes, I know. Well, thank you so much. I mean, we're all challenged, but I think, again, with the events industry, trickle-down effect to that independent performer, people are fair. Let's just keep negotiating. But thank you very much for joining us today. We might see you a little later, right, John?
I hope so.
All right, thanks so much. So I'd like to next introduce Larry Cosio and Mahez Somalia. Larry is going to share some insight into insurance. As I said, nobody has assurance for insurance now. Larry, we need your help. We need your help to understand the basics. So thank you, and welcome, Larry and Mahez.
Well, let's see if we can make everything work the way it's supposed to.
Okay.
And we're trying to share screens. Can you see that?
Yes, excellent.
Hey. All right, so my name is Larry Casillo with Casillo Insurance, part of the Brown & Brown Insurance Group. Been approached by Diane to try to shed some light on COVID-19 and what insurance has as far as a playbook. I am not an attorney. Well, some people think I am. I'm not licensed and I don't practice it. I'm not a claims adjuster. I'm a licensed insurance broker for 41 years. And we write in all 50 states, licensed in all 50. It's a very fluid issue. I'm totally confused by rationalizing who's supposed to pay what. But today's presentation is based on my opinions. And it's only my opinion. Everybody has an opinion. You didn't pay for them, so it's great. It's free advice and free opinions. So let's see if I can kind of touch base on a couple of things. First off, we're going to start off what everybody wants. You want that little piece of paper called a certificate of insurance. I got 10 minutes of this, and the rest is going to be on answering your questions. So we're going to talk about, this is the piece of paper that you get. Dying to get this piece of paper, check off that box. All right, we have proof of insurance. But do you ever read this piece of paper? Most people don't. The top part is the most important part, and it comes in right here, and it says this certificate doesn't constitute a contract between the insurer, the representative producer, or the certificate holder. That piece of paper is totally useless. The insurance policy is what governs what is covered and what's excluded. Unfortunately, too many people think that that piece of paper is it's a get out of jail card. You want to make sure that it's an occurrence-based policy, especially if it's a special event. That box will be checked right there. That's the next section on down. You want to make sure that the policy dates coincide with your event date if you're getting event insurance or you're having subcontractors show up. If your event's in January and the policy expires December, there's potential you have no coverage. You want to be named as additional insured for a special event, any of the subcontractors that come. If it's not checked in that box, you are not covered. You do not get defense coverage under their policy. A certificate holder is totally useless. That means you get to hold that piece of paper. That's all it means. It doesn't confer any rights to you. So make sure you have that clear. You'll be named as a certificate holder or additional insured if the box is checked. It's going to be in that bottom left-hand corner. And the date for an updated accord that has the correct verbiage is March of 2016. That's the latest version. Some people are still using outdated forms, which could possess a potential claim challenge. And that's always going to be in the bottom box. It should have information in there. Now, amazing how many people are professionals at Adobe. You can go on to pdffiler.com or filler.com and complete your own certificate of insurance. You don't need agents or insurance. You can just falsify your own. And we see this happening all the time. So one of the most important things, never, ever, 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 ever accept a certificate of insurance from any of your customers, only from their insurance agent. Why? Because they can change data. A 12-year-old can manipulate a PDF on their phone. The agent usually will have errors and omissions insurance in case something's wrong or there's no coverage. Anyone coming to the event setup, whether it's portalets, it's tents, tables, chairs, entertainers, they should have general liability, auto insurance, and workers' comp, even though everybody says they're subcontractors. Your insurance as an event planner, the one you take out to cover yourselves, does not cover the event you are putting on for somebody. It has to be in the name of the company or the people that are having the event. We see a lot of people that use their own certificate to get into hotels. That's not what your insurance is for, and it doesn't cover. So don't dig yourselves into a hole. The real reasons for this webinar, COVID-19. So main points I'm going to touch on, is there coverage or not? Who's going to pay for this mess? Should I file a claim? Popular question. What coverage do I need as an event planner? So let's break it down. There's 3 property insurance forms. General liability has nothing to do with this. This is all property based for a claim for COVID. So you have basic form, which lists out what they do cover. The rest is excluded. If it's not there, there's no coverage. Not used very often. Broad form takes everything in one and adds in what's under 2. Picks up snow, ice, sleet, water damage, that kind of stuff. Number 3 is what we see most of the time now, which is called special form. And you'll see it on the certificate of insurance or their policy. Covered causes of loss that are listed, and it means direct physical loss unless the loss is excluded or limited in the policy. That's a standard form number. ISO Insurance Service Offices, they're the entity in the insurance world that puts together these forms and these insurance policies. There's all kinds of different forms. There's all kinds of different exclusions. Some are state specific. Some of them are manuscript endorsements or manuscript policies that they make up themselves and attach to a policy. Every state is different. So you have to make sure that you look at your insurance policies and the policies that are affecting your customers. We used to hear it was an all-risk form. Well, that caused a lot of problems. The insurance industry paid a lot of money because it says all risk, so everything's covered. They haven't used that for about 25 years. Now, the part that is kind of important here that everybody's looking for coverage under is business income or business interruption, synonymous words. It is not automatically included in a property or inland marine insurance policy. It's an added endorsement you add on. It's based off of your net earnings that you figure out with a form. Usually it's going to be a minimum of 50–60% of your gross sales. The insurance that covers loss of income under business income, business interruption, is going to be when a business has damage to its premises or contents by a covered cause of loss. Keywords, covered cause of loss. If it's number 3 special form, it's listed. The loss causes a slowdown or suspension of operations. We have that right now. Applies to financial loss suffered during the time required to replace and get back to how it was previous to the incident. So there's a specified time limit. There's usually a waiting period. Usually it's 72 hours. Some of them have a time limit, 30 days, 6 months, 12 months. How long it's going to take to get back to where you were previous to the event. You could have a limit payout. Some policies have a limit payout of $15,000, no more than $50,000. They're called sublimits. What triggers that coverage? That's the most important part. A direct physical loss or damage to the property by covered perils. So if it's excluded, it's not a covered peril. This is where the fight's going on right now because they want to know if it's a direct physical loss. Some legal analysts are saying, hey, it's a physical loss because somebody touches it that could have the infection. And it lives for 9 days, 15 days, whatever version you want to go with. Other attorneys on the insurance side are saying there is no physical loss. If somebody touched it and it's infected and they wipe it off with Lysol wipe, is it damaged still? So huge arguments going back and forth whether there's coverage or no coverage. My PowerPoint presentation I put together for Diane in this event has been changed probably 7 times due to every day the news that I get in the morning from the insurance industry changes by the afternoon, state by state. All the Department of Insurances, they go by different rules. Different rules apply to different states. Different insurance companies have different endorsements and policy coverages. So this is, I mean, this is a real insurance challenge. After 40 years, I've never seen anything like this. The exclusions, I mean, we already know we had SARS, we had HIV and AIDS, swine flu, MERS, we had Ebola, we had Zika. All of these things have come up that have caused exclusions to be put into policies. And it's all based on interpretation, the law in that state. And you're going to see waffling back and forth from the insurance world attorneys and the litigant attorneys. So here's one of the exclusions that we see. We do not pay for loss, cost, or expense caused by any virus, bacterium, or other microorganism. Pretty clear, kind of broad, but when the attorneys get in there, they're going to argue, well, that word doesn't apply to that word. That verb doesn't apply to this. Any contamination by any virus, bacterium, or other microorganism, or denial of access to property because of the same. Denial of access to property. Huge, huge. So who's denying access? Civil authority. Now we have another one. This is also covered under the exclusions. Order of any civil authority, including seizure, confiscation, destruction, or quarantine of property. If it's covered under a peril that's listed on the policy. If it's excluded, then there's not any coverage. So this civil authority issue has been a huge topic for the last couple of months. If the state says you need to close down, if the government, the president issues a mandate telling people to close down, not have groups over 50, 10, 5, 3, it changes every day. Does that mean that they closed your business or they ask you to close it so you don't spread the disease? Interpretation. So was there physical loss as per the property damage clause? There's no clear definition. The courts have different interpretations of it. The widely accepted definition, though, of physical damage is a distinct, demonstrable, and physical alteration of its structure, for example, damage from fire or water. Does civil authority issue provide coverage? By mandating closure of some businesses, does it cause property damage? Huge discussion. It definitely caused financial issues for everybody, us included. Was access denied due to road closure or damage to building, which is traditionally what a civil authority would do? So when we have our hurricanes, our tornadoes, when we have fires, they come in, they say, you can't go in anymore, you can't get to your house. This is a different type of civil authority closure. So how are they going to deal with it? Thank God John went in front of me. Number one, analyze your insurance policy. your state laws, because it's going to depend on if you have coverage. You may have to modify it, work with a broker that knows what's going on. Read the exclusions. There's an exclusion page. They come in a PDF. Control F, put in exclusions, and read every single one. Most people have never read their auto or homeowners insurance. Forget about reading your business insurance. As a professional, are you held to a higher level of explaining to your customers that they need to have the right insurance? Did you ask for it? Did you get it from an agent that says that the coverage is in place for their exposures? Look at the exclusions. Does force majeure and for insurance coverage? Well, is it your event or is it somebody else's event? You're just the event planner. It's not your event. You're just putting it together for them. So that's more of a contractual issue. Do you use your attorney for your contracts or you modify them yourself because you've been in the business 20, 30 years? Huge mistake. Use your attorneys. It's well worth the money. All right, the real answers. Is there coverage or not? Maybe. They're fighting. There's class action suits, I think, on 5 different insurance companies so far, whether there's going to be coverage or not. This is going to be drawn out forever. Who's going to pay for all this mess? We will all pay for this in the long run. The cost basis for everything that we get to experience is going to change. Companies that own high-rise office buildings are going to be vacant because we found out that you can work from home. The insurance that you pay for special events are going to have more exclusions and are going to have a higher cost. Your business insurance, if you're in the event planning business, could be higher. Should you file a claim if you have business income currently? Yes, file it. Doesn't cost nothing to file, does not hurt your loss history. If nothing is paid out, it does not affect your insurance. So if you have business income on your current policy, go ahead and file. What insurance coverage do you need as an event planner? Number 1, general liability. Number 2, professional liability. They're not included. Professional liability protects you for having a license, a professional designation with above average knowledge of your industry. Property coverage with business income. It could be inland marine, it could be property coverage. They're synonymous. One covers it if it's motion, the other one's a fixed location. Commercial auto, some of you need it, some don't. Once again, talk to your insurance broker, find out if your exposure is there. If you're not going to deliver anything, you probably can get away with just business use on a personal auto policy. So there's a lot of different variables. This is the 3rd event planner webinar that I've done. Very similar questions and answers have come out of it. And I'm sure Diane probably has a few for us for today. Infectious disease coverage, is it going to be available? It's probably going to be something similar to the terrorist coverage after 9/11, where it's a share between the insurance companies and the government. They're going to pay a certain percentage and the insurance company will pay a certain percentage. It'll be offered to everybody, probably similar to terrorist. You can deny it or pay for it. Most people deny terrorist coverage because they don't think it's going to happen to them. So how much is really in that account? The cost to include infectious disease coverage is cost prohibitive today, and it's probably going to increase and get worse because of the exposure now. Each state has its own laws. The next 3 years are going to be very interesting in the insurance world and the amusement and entertainment world. The majority of what we insure is tied to amusement or entertainment, and it's affected everybody up and down the ladder. So it's going to be something that you need to be cognizant of. You have to talk to your insurance broker. You have to look at your policies and understand what you have, and also have some knowledge to have somebody on the sidelines to advise your customers, because you will be held responsible if something goes wrong. Active shooter insurance was not an issue until the Vegas shooting. Event cancellation insurance, been around forever. A lot of people don't buy it because they don't ever think that it's going to be in there. Do you recommend it to your customers? Is it in writing when you're writing up your bids to your customers? If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Mentioning on a phone is not a defense in a court case. You'll lose. So make sure it's in writing. And I guess that's going to be basically 10,000 foot level. Diane, what do you got for questions?
Well, before I go into the questions, I'd like to bring Mahays into the conversation with us. And especially, as you said, and I do have a few different rules, different states, different insurance companies, different restrictions or obligations. So Mahays, are you with us? And can you give us a little bit of insight or thoughts on what Larry just presented?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I can. How much it fits exactly with Larry, we'll see, because I think my comment's going to be a little broader, sort of giving just the overall perspective on sort of everything that's happened from an overall corporate perspective. And obviously insurance is a huge piece of, corporations and a huge piece of business. So, but I want to start with hearkening back to something Jonathan said, which I was sort of chuckling at when he was talking about, sort of getting the marketeers and some of the financial people like in a room together. And I think he said having a death match. So there's a natural tension that exists in corporations, insurance companies, and all other companies, right? Big companies around, the sort of the bean counters, if you will, and the people who are the marketeers, et cetera. And so one thing I think you're going to see happen now is there's going to be a little bit of a power shift, right? Because all these events have canceled, events that companies have spent millions and millions of dollars on, and companies have been, quote, okay, right? They've managed to, survive without having an event. There's going to be a little bit of a power shift, right, to the bean counters of why do you need to have these events? Or if you really need to have these events, instead of spending $5 million on it, right, couldn't you do this event for $500,000, right? So there's going to be, so that natural tension is now going to shift a little bit. And so going back to the death cage match, right? One of the participants is probably going to have one of their arms tied behind their back. So I think it's something to think about. And the question is, if what I said is correct, what does that mean for us in the event management business? So one, we should be all thinking that revenue will not be the same, right? When this whole thing comes back, we're not going to get the full price. Everybody's going to have to take a haircut to some degree, right? When we reemerge. Again, the case in point that I think about is in 2008, pre-2008, when we hired speakers, et cetera, we'd pay them somewhere roughly like $15,000, $25,000. Post 2008, right, that immediately went to $5,000. Again, around that. Any particular reason why? Not really, right? Things changed, right? And so there was a price adjustment. So I think that's one thing we have to get through our heads. We also need to help think about how we help the marketeers, like how we help them explain, how we help them make the business case, how we help them understand the benefits of events and what an appropriate return on investment, right? Not just show up and say, yes, we can do an event. We're going to actually have to help them explain to the people who are going to question them as to why we should have events. And I think that gets us to have to be more transparent about our costs, what they are, when we incur them. I think we had a discussion at one of the industry meetings about how we bill. And do we start to move more toward a professional model, right? Where we start to think about billing on an hourly basis and based on our real time and real effort, right? So again, a whole bunch of things there, right? But all about how do we really start to help these marketeers explain the benefits of events. The other thing is if the financial picture is going to change, is how do we think about our own costs? You know, again, I haven't been in this business for a long time, but one of the impressions I have is that in some cases, our costs seem to be a little heavier. And when I say heavier, I mean some of our overhead costs, et cetera. And so I think one of the things as we reemerge from this is to take a hard look at what costs particularly hard costs, right? Particularly operating costs that are fixed, right? How much of it do we have to have, and how do we maybe start to gravitate to maybe more of a modular model, something, right, that can help us reduce our costs, as we go into this quote new abnormal.
It's 10 o'clock.
Okay. I think a couple other things. I'll share this. I think all corporate executives, right, there's going to be a new reality for corporate executives across the board. And I'll just say a couple things, and then you can kind of think about it, maybe figure out what this means to you and what this means to your business. But I think across the board, right, all executives, number one, the word virtual, right? It's going to mean, it means something different in the post world than it meant on January 1st, in terms of collaboration. Even something like doctors. I had a physical coming up, and my doctor's office called me and asked me if I wanted my doctor to do the physical virtually. I don't have any actual medical conditions, at least that I know of, so it was just an annual physical. I'm really not sure how you do that, right, without looking at my ear or whatever. But this is the world that we're going through, right? So somebody else talked about what's the implication for real estate, right? As we think about virtual. Now, I'm on the board. One of the boards I'm on is the board of AAA. We have about 10,000 employees. We had probably 200 of them working at home. And in a 2-week period of time, we went from 200 working at home to 10,000 working at home, right? A massive shift. And so again, as you come out of this, we're going to be pushing the CEO, the board members, to say, well, how many people really have to come in the office? And so once we get that number, there's going to be a question about, well, how much space do we actually really need now, right? Because maybe we should be changing our footprint. Back to the conversation I had about cost. A clear push, predilection to making decisions quickly, right? Because corporations can be very, very slow sometimes. This might be something that might be good for us ultimately, right? But there's going to be much more of a, we've got to be able to make decisions quickly,
right?
Because things happen that require quick decisions. There's going to be more thinking. This is something the insurance industry has been good at, which is thinking about risk, thinking about what are the worst case scenarios or the black swan, right? What are those things that could just come along? We're not anticipating, right, but it could come along. I think all corporate executives, no matter what business you're in, are going to be thinking about that much more. And lastly, is an overall pallor of uncertainty, right? What's going to happen next? What does this mean for supply chains? What does this mean for how we thought about global, what global is, what global means on January 1st, and what do we think about global now, right? What if there's another outbreak, right? So just a cloud, an overhang, right, of uncertainty that will hang over everyone. So one last thing, so I leave at least my comments on a positive note, and that is, I think if you just listen to some of the things even I've talked about, and some of the other folks have talked about, there's a huge opportunity here for messaging. Messaging to shareholders, management, your board, customers, etc. Messaging about everything from what are you doing in your company to preserve cash, to what do you how are you thinking about the 2020 plan? What are the products? What impact will this have on product? What impact will this have on pricing? How do you your employees communicate to them? What have you done, or what are you going to do around layoffs and the difference between that and furloughs, et cetera? So you can either think about this on a kind of a talking head on a 3x5 card, right? And see how that works out, right? Or you can figure out a way, and I think this is where we come into play as an event. How do you do this and deliver these messages to all these various audiences, maybe with a little bit more excitement, with a little bit more enthusiasm, with a little bit more resulting in a little bit more engagement and creativity. And at least I'd make the case that there's no one and there's no industry that's has a better opportunity and is in better shape to do this and to help companies with this than the event industry.
Well, you know what's Mahays, thank you for that, by the way, and thank you because it's a good lead in for Gary, but I want to go back to a couple things that you said and that Larry said, all right? This whole situation that we're in right now is giving us all industry verticals around the world, everyone, an opportunity to up their game. And I will say this in my experience in events, that sometimes you go in and because events people are passionate and they're artists and they're creative and they want to give it their all, sometimes, you minimize your pricing strategy, or you don't charge enough for your services, which then in turn do not allow you, and this is for Larry and Mahays, to then buy the proper insurance and protect yourself with contractual. I mean, if you're running a business, you're running a business. Now, there are some people online that work in corporations, and their obligation is to make sure their event companies and their vendors are properly covered. Question, just to go back, for clarification for everybody, exclusions. Is there an option, if I don't agree with an exclusion, Larry, that I can pay a premium and make it and protect myself? Do I have an option, or is an exclusion an exclusion?
That depends on the carrier and the type of insurance that you're dealing with.
Right.
If they know on the front side, or your broker knows on the front side what the exposure is going to be for your events, if you give them a layout, let's say I'm going to have 11 events, these are the sizes, that gives them the opportunity to make sure that they find a carrier that'll provide the coverages without the exclusions, or allow you to buy back the exclusion.
So you do have I guess what I'm saying to people, yeah, in other words, what I'm saying is there's always an option, but you need to work with a professional.
Yes.
To understand your choices, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be an online program.
Right. I mean, even event cancellation. So for those of us listening, just as Mahays said, the pricing structure is going to change. My gosh, when we go back, and we'll be discussing this throughout the day, how is the ballroom going to look? And that's for this afternoon, but somewhere along the line, someone is going to pay for that real estate. Mahays, we have a question for you. It's like, since many folks do not have loss of revenue coverage, what is your advice on the level of emergency savings a given business should have on hand in relation to months of operating expense?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, again, based on what I've seen so far, the industry seems to be a little bit light in that. Again, that's a sort of a broad statement because you all have your own different businesses. But we try to put away 2% just as a no matter what. We just continue to try to put that away for that rainy day fund. But it's difficult to give a carte blanche answer because it depends, right? I mean, it depends on what your overhead is. Again, as I said earlier,
right? How
much of it is fixed, right? How much of it can you actually get rid of? How much liquidity do you have in your business? Do you actually have cash? Do you have lines of credit? There's a lot of things you have to look at. I'll just answer this question by saying you really need to evaluate it for yourself. But just like you think about this on your personal level, right, there needs to be a rainy day fund. And certainly, again, if you think about what's the impact of an event like this, it really brings that home to, right, we really need to make sure we have a cushion, right, that in case something like this happens. A lot of other industries like banking, insurance, it's mandated, right, by law. This is what the capital requirements will be. We have a pretty fairly unregulated business, so I think we got to really look at that and make those decisions on our own.
Yeah, exactly. So Larry, what would you say with the couple of minutes we have left, and Mahays, I'll ask you this too, you're giving advice to the event community on a corporate level. So I'm an internal planner, I'm a marketer, I have my own company, or I'm an independent, right? Regardless of that, when you're planning an event and producing an event, what are the, say, 3, I must have this in my insurance clause types of protection? Or my insurance contract.
Your own insurance?
Pardon me?
Coverage besides your own insurance
Yeah.
coverage would be number
Besides
one.
my own, yeah, general and what would I have besides general and professional liability before I even start to talk to a client about producing or planning an event for them?
Be the same that I had on the PowerPoint. You want the general liability, professional liability, potentially the contents coverage or inland marine coverage for any property you would have. Your event that you're going to put on, every subcontractor, everybody that's listed under that event from A to Z should be naming you as additional insured. So you have defense coverage if they screw up. Not your fault, something they do.
Well, that's a good point, because we actually had, not to interrupt, we had a comment on that. The COI, right? Your certificate of insurance. I know when I had my company, I named all of my assigns on it, and then I was named on theirs in return.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah,
Yep.
because someone was asking that. So make sure it's a reciprocity, that everyone's policy is protecting. Mahays, would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And I just add one thing that's non-technical, which is in the future, just don't go do the event, right? Somebody says, I got an event, I want to do it in Vegas on June 1st, right? Or whatever it is, just don't go plop in and just do the event, because we all can do that. Make sure you spend some time thinking of helping them think about what, even though they may have come up with the idea of having an event, push on, why are they having the event? What are the benefits they're going to expect from that event, and sort of enhance that. And if you can do something on the back end to go back and say, you know, there may be a way of looking at this, measuring this, et cetera, and looking at the benefits of it, you're going to end up in a better place with that client because they're realizing, you're much more of a business person, and you're really helping them think about, because there's real benefits to doing these events. And if we just go do the event, we just don't want to leave that on the table. So that'd be my party.
Yes, we are an intrinsic part of communication, and with this situation that we're in, some of you heard me say this before, there is no doubt in my mind that events will be back and we will be leading the pack, because advertising needs us and PR needs us. So think about your business, your business model moving forward. And I strongly say this, there's so much to learn about insurance, Larry. Thank you for sharing that, because I know I learned the hard way when I had a 60-inch screen break, that there's insurance for everything. We have to think about, and Mahays, just as you said, we're in business. So when you go into a client, if they don't respect what our business costs are, then maybe they're not the right client, or they don't understand. John?
Diane, I have a question for Mahays.
Yes.
And this one is sort of like asking the shoemaker, does he provide shoes for his kids? But what do insurance companies do relative to their incentive programs, their sales programs, et cetera, that they're finding they have to cancel now? How do you handle that? Do you buy insurance? Do you have insurance? How does the insurance industry sort of look at this in their own way?
You mean, so they had to cancel events that?
Yeah, let's say you have a major incentive program that's set to go to, let's say, Italy.
Yes.
And that was scheduled for April in Italy.
Correct.
How would you handle that from your standpoint as to, are you self-insuring? Are you looking at this? Do you have some provision? You mentioned reserves, and all insurance companies are obligated, obviously, to have reserves. Do you look then to your reserve, or how do you address this overall? Obviously, calling your lawyer to see what your lawyer can do for you. But from the insurance company, just like I said, the shoemaker's kids generally go without the shoes.
Yeah, no, so the whole reserving requirement, that's really about loss reserves, right? Your payments, et cetera, et cetera. So that really has nothing to do with this, right? Anything else, like something like you canceled the event, et cetera, that's all going to come out of your operating costs, right? So again, it really depends. Every company's different. Some companies might have felt like, we're going to have this event, so we don't need insurance just in case. Others might, just like, again, personally, you might go on a trip and you might buy insurance just in case something happens. It really depends. It's really a company by company thing, but all of that would be included in the company's operating costs and wouldn't have anything to do with any kind of reserving or anything like that.
Yeah. That's what, Larry, do you have a quick comment on that?
I was thinking, we've had a bunch of phone calls in 2020, and we didn't have last year where people are asking for the business travel accident insurance if they're going international because of the health, if you have a health issue or you're stranded or you need an attorney. That's become really popular, especially if you have people traveling international in your company. A lot of the larger companies are getting it. Anybody going to a trade show, we found a bunch of them asking for that type of insurance because they have so many employees traveling, and workers' comp may or may not cover them. So,
And
thanks,
probably going to become a lot more popular.
yes.
We have one last question before we move on, and this could be General Larry or Mahays. I'll ask you, do you see clients asking for proof of financial stability from a planning company for the future before distributing funds? You know, I mean, and really, if you're a private company, what can other people ask you for? Who wants to start? Larry, you want to start? Mahays, quick comment?
Well, yeah, I'll go first. I think the short answer is yes, right? I mean, you've seen this movement has been taking place anyway, right? Where companies are now looking at all their vendors, all their relationships. One of the things that's really heightened this is cybersecurity, right? So anybody who has access to the company systems, they're taking a hard look at those folks anyway. And another concern is the one I think inherent in this question, which is what's the viability, right? What if they can't deliver on the things that they say they're supposed to deliver on? So I think yes, there'll be even more of that, going forward. I think the other thing I would just add is that the first time I ever had an opportunity to have an event person come into my office in one of my jobs coming up the ranks and talk about how they would think about pricing an event, et cetera. To tell you the truth, I was surprised because I hadn't really dealt with it before, but I dealt with other professional services, accountants and attorneys, right, et cetera. And so the sort of core model of, hey, we're going to do a bunch of work, right? We're going to spend money. We're going to do these proposals for you, and we're going to make you happy. It's going to be great. We're not going to charge you for any of that. You don't have to pay for it. And hey, look, if you pick us, you pick us. Not having any kind of hourly rate or anything. I remember thinking, boy, this is really an unusual business. I guess it must work for them because that's kind of the experience. But again, I think that is something that probably needs to change as you think about this business going forward.
Yes, like more of an agency mentality, which has only been discussed for the past 35 years or so. But thank you, Mahays. And Mahays, I'm also glad that you referred to that all of us getting a haircut after this, because I'm going to be first in line. The bands are getting wider. There's no easy answer. Larry, thank you so much. Mahays, thank you so much. I very appreciate it. And I know for everyone who's listening, we will be, any questions that weren't answered, we'll be answering in the next couple of days. So thank you both.
Thank you, Dan.
And with that, I'd like to bring on Gary Pagano. For as Mahays said, how do you go to your CEOs? How do you address the new situation, pivoting to virtual? Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Diane.
And Gary, I love the phrase that you introduced to me, mobilizing around adaptive creativity. Oh, I love that. So anyway, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Diane. It's a pleasure. So one thing we know about our industry, the only constant, if you've ever taken Diane's class at NYU, you'll know this, the only constant is change. We have change hitting us all the time, whether it's like when I've worked with Sam at South by Southwest, having all your I's dotted, T's crossed with the Tobacco and Alcoholic Control Board, only to have them show up on site and say, oh no, even yes, we've discussed this, but no, you can't serve beer to 10,000 people. So you have those curveballs all the time. The thing is, with what we're dealing with now with the pandemic, is something that's totally new to so many of us, but it is that change. And we were looking at this, I think, when we first started hearing about COVID-19 and what it was doing in the East. Because,
before you continue, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yes.
when was that about? Like, was that, I mean, from a planning point of view, was that what?
Well, by that point, we were really looking at this. We had been following it in December, but it was really January when we came together and when they started at work introducing travel restrictions.
Right.
This is when we were like, if you have to get the CEO's approval to travel to China or Japan, something's up.
Right.
So what we decided to do is, listen, I have an incredible team. You know, we talk about that agency mentality, Diane, but we kind of work that way. I have really skilled people that are just brilliant people. So what I did was, knowing that this was something that was in the future and we didn't understand it, we didn't know the pathology of the virus at the time, so we didn't know what was going on. What I decided to do is bring my team together, and what we decided to talk about was, if we have to shift to what they're saying virtual, how do we create that kind of engagement around our brands, that face-to-face engagement, which is so important to all our internal clients and the way we do business? How do we keep that engagement moving forward in an age where we may not be able to come together?
Right.
So that was the big question. So we sat down and we started talking. We put different task force together just to ideate about this. Now, we were also working on the upfront season is coming up, you know, where those are, with us, we do different types of upfronts. The CBS Legacy does a really big one at, I think it's Carnegie Hall. For Viacom Legacy, we have always done something a little different. So it used to be big shows. Then what we did is we went by agency and invited the heads of agencies together. So each night for basically 2 weeks, we would do these customized dinners. So everybody had this intimate experience. They got to ask the questions. They got to see what we were offering for the upcoming year, but in a very intimate way.
Right.
We knew that we were going to have to pivot and start changing things. Plus, we had also been working on the initiative within election year. We had been working with our pro-social and digital and social teams to work on a project with the, through When We Vote, the Michelle Obama initiative.
Yeah.
So what they did was the mayor and the school board of Detroit, very impoverished area in our country, they said that we are going to guarantee 100% voter registration from all our seniors graduating high school. So for that, what we decided to do is, what we would do is, for the winning high schools that actually achieved that, we were going to throw them a very large prom, which was, we were going to have Big Sean perform, other performance. It was going to be this big blowout. So we have these events that are lined up, and we're starting to see the restrictions, and we're learning now more about the pathology. So people have been doing digital conferences, digital virtual meetings. Digital is a new combination of virtual and digital. I'm coining that phrase.
I like it. I got it.
But so what we had to come up with some solutions, and to also go to people and say, hey, you know what? Doing something live may not be the best thing. Because with us as events people, we all know this. The important thing for us is the needs of our guests are paramount. We have to worry about that guest experience, whether it's finding out that, oh, they're really reacting for this brand, they love this product, they love the show. Besides that, we really have to worry about their well-being. We worry about risk management. Right. So knowing this, red flags started to be raised with us. So what we did was we started talking internally at how we can change and leverage some of the things that we're up against really make this a positive thing. So in speaking about this prom idea that we were doing, and since, so what we did is we approached our teams and said, look, we would love to pivot to a virtual prom. This means that there's going to be still, we could do this for 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,000 people, but we're going to have to do a lot of digging into this. So we brought our production team in, our team, and we started looking at some of the platforms. The cool thing is my team started looking at some of the non-traditional platforms going into gaming. Gaming is a really incredible way where so many different players can connect together, and they have a different type of experience. It's not watching my big head talking for the 20 minutes. This is something that they're interactive with. And that's what we want to get with the virtual events. We want to carry that feel and that excitement. We know that we're looking at so many different people that had stakeholders that had certain needs. So we wanted to try to address them all. So what we did is we started talking about performances with our production team. How can we orchestrate performances and do things for the guests in terms of, being brought in to just get excited about this, like, oh, we got Big Sean that's playing right for us. But also, what about the experience for prom that was lacking if we go to virtual? So what we've started doing was ideating about creating virtual red carpets for people at home. So we would send out different types of backdrops, digital backdrops that they could put behind them and they could pose in their beautiful prom gowns. We urge people to get dressed up. We also, another thing that we're looking at, our stakeholders, our caterers that are, their businesses have just been devastated by this. But we're also looking at some of the smaller businesses that are getting hit, the smaller delis, the restaurants, everything. And what we wanted to do is find some ways that we could also send hospitality to these people. So we started coming up with an idea of, are there different businesses that that do delivery, so we can time deliveries in each of these sections of Detroit that we'll be doing, so that they can get some kind of amenity that would be really fun for them, whether it's a premium or swag about the event, but also just some food, something to drink, some fun mocktails or something. We started putting this all together. We came up with a presentation. We went to our clients who were adamant that this is going to happen come hell or high water. However, they listened to us. And this is the hard part of our job, because look, our jobs are on the line. We create face-to-face engagement. We want that live engagement. When you're doing it virtually, you may not need as much staff. So we don't want to see that, but we also have to present the right thing for our clients. So we went to them, we had this drawn up, and we presented this. So from a group that was determined that we had to do this face-to-face, when they heard about just our concern about, if we do this and even 5 people get sick, that's out of 5,000, that's still too many. Because they could bring that to homes, they could bring it to the elderly. We don't want to chance that. So let's do the right thing. Let's be responsible, and we can create something that's new and fun for the attendee. Because we also, what do we do as events people? We look at our demographic. We know how they consume things. We know what they want. Everybody is craving for that connection. So we put this deck together. We went to our social and digital teams and spoke with them, and we were able to turn their view around, and now they've embraced this. This is going to happen in June. We're looking at right now doing the virtual prom. It may run a little later. We may have to do it as a homecoming. It all depends about how the school districts can get their part of this together. but we were able to go to our internal clients and say, this is the responsible thing, and it can create the kind of engagement and buzz and still click all the boxes for you.
Yeah,
So
exactly. But that's a good point, Gary. I mean, the thing is, and so the time frame, because when you work in a major corporation, you know, sometimes things take time, but lately, you know, an hour is like a year, isn't it? So what was the time frame that you turned things around? And so you basically met with your C-suite and explained to them the dynamics of what options existed to continue communication, right?
this took us, Diane, when we first started with the larger groups, to getting this information to my boss, Stephen Kipp, so he could really get everybody on board. We had 2.5 weeks to really put a program together and grasp what needed to be done.
Right.
The wonderful thing is, by doing that groundwork, the other stakeholders, our production team that jumped in, the digital and social teams, we had done the groundwork for them. So it was really by that point buying in and seeing how we could maybe save some dollars because of their expertise, now saying, well, we don't have to go through this third party to host this. We can host this on our own network.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to what, what Mahays was talking about too with Larry. And I mean, John, it's all a lot of it is, it's all financially driven. I mean, in the process of doing this switch and this pivot, you're also working on a budget and alternatives, and so that you can present the numbers, right?
Well, and at this time, I mean, I think a lot of the major companies, large companies, are dealing with the same thing. When you have this staff that isn't in the industry, we have to save some money somehow. The wonderful thing about our company is we're looking at these savings from some of these projects, some of the things that we have planned for our internal, our staff events, which are very robust at Viacom CBS. We are looking at ways of saving that so we can save the staff resources and really cut into the budgets and look at different ways of creating engagement, being smarter. And what I loved about Mahays, what he said too, we are responsible for going to these people and telling them, look, we know you want to do an event. Is it the right thing?
Right.
Is this the best thing for you right now? I mean, it's like those clients that we get that are always like, we want to do a rooftop party. I'm like, oh, well, look, it's a rainy season. There's no places where we can have a rain plan. They're like, it's not going to rain. And we know it's going to rain.
I know. Well, listen, we'd all love a client to come to us right now, rain or not. But the thing is, yes. But just, we do have a comment from someone, and I share this one, is, my firm is pivoting from an in-person event to a virtual event with a gift of money to use for hospitality that the employee can use to spend locally to support restaurants. So, again, as we know, this is not about forgetting about the human experience. This is about learning a new way to communicate. But Gary, when we first spoke to, and just to wrap up the couple minutes we have, and thank you for this, is you went through the process with your team. You kept your C-suite alerted that you were doing research on the different options that are available to us now and growing every day. And that basically is what kept this going. And I'm sure it's not over, because we have the rest of the year to decide. So how did you leave it with them? And did you see a change in their perception of you and your team in the process?
Yes. Yeah. The wonderful thing is, and this is getting back to the adaptive creativity, which is something that Bob Backish, our CEO, has really been talking about, especially the last couple of months with us, because we still have to move business forward, but we have to do it in the same thoughtful, creative way, pushing those boundaries that we did before the pandemic.
I mean, exactly. And you know what? So here's exactly, I was going to go there, and thank you very much to Polly for making this comment. And I'll say this personally. All right. I'm getting pushback on the number of staff to handle a virtual event. It's a misconception that doing a virtual event, meeting, conference is any different than being in person.
Correct.
And I'm going to say this, yes, it is. Yes, do you have any guidance for what is truly needed? Producer, speaker, chat monitor, Q&A? Gary, what's your thoughts? Because I know what it takes to produce this event, and it is no different.
It is
Our
no
hotel is the screen, and every one of the 8 people involved has a part. You find that? Yep.
We explained this to some of our people that were pushing back on this, because they're like, well, how come our budget, you know, we should see more savings and stuff like that. So I said, well, here's what we're doing. We've eliminated some of the freelancers, because right now my job is to make sure that I have my staff that are full-time doing their work. But what we did was start to show the areas. We did a complete staffing breakdown for everybody, so that they knew that going into someone speaking, a talking head like this,
Right.
We had a producer who had so many, much time beforehand,
Right.
meeting with the person, going over the content, making sure the content worked, working with all the speakers that we were going to go to. We had a coordinator that worked with that production person, the producer, just to make sure that they were getting all the materials to and from. So we still needed someone to handle those materials. From the event side, we still needed coordinators, because what they started doing was reaching out, getting the guest list, finding out where these people live, what kind of things can we send them. We had them researching vendors that could drop ship, researching vendors that were local that could provide food, where there are places that could provide alcohol, So
it's the same thing. It's the same. I mean, just for the sake of time, because we're wrapping up, but just the bottom line is, everyone, and this is what Gary's saying, what I'm saying, whether your event is physical, and I remember Chris Weil years ago coined the term phygital. So we have phygital and digital. It still takes the same amount of effort. So again, like someone just commented, great, use your AV teams, use your production teams. We are logistics production experts.
Yes.
There is a need for someone who's not afraid to be in the camera, who can MC this, who can keep it going on, who can keep the flow. It's a facilitation that I'm doing with you throughout this process. So we're all here to learn. And Gary, thank you so much. Do you have anything you want to leave us with?
One last thought is just, Diana Scott just sent something. We still need to create flawlessly executed events. We have to. And in order to do that, you need your human resources.
Absolutely.
You need them. And so that reduction is one thing that you have to stand by. Your team is there to make sure that virtual event is going to run as smoothly as doing it at the Marriott.
Yeah, no question. And you know what? The more we do these, and I have some ideas for the upcoming ones we're doing, the more they'll be engaging, there'll be interstitials, it's the way we're going. It's like we'll change our habits. So Gary, good luck to you, huh? Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today.
Diane.
Okay, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. So everybody, we have a break. It's 1:38 my time, but we had a 10-minute break. It's now an 8-minute break. So we'll see you back in 8 minutes. You don't want to miss Trina. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Without any hesitation, I'm so excited to introduce Trina and welcome Trina Rosen. Trina, thank you again for sharing your information. I know we're all anxious to hear the latest and looking forward to it myself. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Diane. Thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Trina Rosen. I am a certified public accountant. My practice is located in South Pasadena, which is part of LA County, California, and I specialize in individuals, sole proprietors, and small businesses Just like many of you, I have been adjusting to the new normal for the past month, also concentrating on learning the CARES Act and helping my clients really navigate this hard reality that we're in and the fast moving legislation that's coming, I feel like almost daily. A lot has happened since our last meeting 2 weeks ago, Diane. So I just want to kind of quickly go over that. PPP program has run out of money, as many of you have heard. Right before that, SBA though clarified for us how we should treat sole proprietors for PPP purposes. That was nice. And right after that, they ran out of money. They also clarified what we should do with the partners and their self-employment income. IRS launched their Get My Payment site, where if you qualify, you can actually check on the status of your economic impact payment. And most importantly, some of the states started to get their act together, specifically New York, and began accepting applications for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Insurance, also known as PUA. So that was a positive development. Before I jump into my PowerPoint presentation, I just want to make a comment, and it's a personal professional opinion on PPP program running out of money. We know that there's another bill in Congress, and hopefully they're going to get their act together this week. And regardless of your party affiliation, whether you're Republican or Democrat, nobody wants to see small businesses fail. So I feel that even if they run out of the next stimulus, there's going to be stimulus 3 and 4. So I wouldn't panic about this popular program running out. I think they're going to keep funding it as long as there is, interest in it. And, again, that's something that, and I tell my client, that's something that we cannot control. We cannot control when the Congress will get their act together and fund more money to that program. But what we can't control is having our numbers and being prepared with the paperwork. So once they open the program back up, you can actually fill out an application. So I'm going to start my PowerPoint presentation now. We have a lot to cover.
Trina, can I just interrupt you just before, because I know the one thing that I remembered from all of your advice is just apply.
Just apply.
Just
Exactly.
apply, because we just got a comment as you were speaking from Sally. Thank you. That new funding just passed.
Yay.
In Congress. So, but I want to just remind everyone, because that's what I did after hearing you.
Yeah. So again, concentrate on what you can control. Apply, get your numbers together, get ready for an application. Again, if they're gonna run out again, there's gonna be more money. So don't concentrate on that. So I'm kind of giving this helicopter view today of what's going on with unemployment, what's going on with PPP program and EIDL. And it's not gonna go into depth. Obviously, we don't have enough time. So hopefully you'll find this somewhat informative. So let me start the screen share. And so just as I mentioned before, IRS has launched Get My Payment site. Website, don't click on anything yet because you will get an error message. It doesn't work yet, but hopefully soon they will be able to authenticate you and you'll be able to see the status of your payment if you're one of the lucky ones that qualifies. The next subject that I want to talk about is traditional employment insurance, which is also known as UI, versus the pandemic unemployment assistant, which is known as PUA, and what are the difference between the two. So traditional unemployment insurance is obviously for someone that is a W-2 employee. They would apply with the state. Pandemic unemployment assistant is also administered through your state, so nothing is administered through the federal government, but it is a new federal government program that it provides unemployment assistance for Americans who would not usually qualify for traditional unemployment insurance, such as self-employed, independent contractors, gig workers, and primary caregivers for children whose school has been closed due to the virus. Some important facts that I kind of want to go over today. So I hear from a lot of my clients, I've applied a month ago, I haven't heard back. What is going on? So obviously all unemployment systems are overwhelmed. I promise you, a human will call you back one day. And once they do, and your claim is actually approved, you will receive benefits backdated to the first day of your unemployment. So it's not when you apply, it is not when you get the interview, it's actually when they established that you needed those benefits. It's actually a cool program. It provides up to 39 weeks of benefits. Right next in the middle, New York's said that their PUA is available between January 27 and December 31st. So backdating it, they will not backdate it past January 27. In California, we always have to be different. So ours start February 2nd through December 26th. That's just how our state is. And in addition to the PUA, so PUA is based on the amounts that are available through your state unemployment. For example, in California, our max weekly benefit is $450. CARES Act also provides additional $600 a week benefit for the PUA. So for example, if you're in New York and it's determined that your weekly benefit is $350, with this CARES Act PUA, you will get additional $600 in addition to your $350. This is, however, only valid between the weeks of March 29 and July 31st. That's because when the law was passed. So those are important information to know. I know in New York, you don't need to apply separately for this extra $600 a week. They will give it to you automatically once your claim is approved. I'm kind of listing the unemployment websites. Again, the states were not prepared for it. What I heard is New York started administering this type of claims already, so that's a good news. Again, they're done through your state's unemployment insurance website. I'm going to jump right into the Paycheck Protection Program, a very popular program, very important one under the CARES Act. Just a quick overview of what it is. It is a temporary new product under the SBA family, first come, first served. Again, we know that the new funding is coming, so apply right away. It is 100% federally guaranteed loan, so you will not be asked for a tax return or your credit check. Very low interest rates at 1%. And the most powerful provision of this program is that if you use the loans correctly, it will turn into a grant and you don't have to repay it. Again, once we get to the forgiveness stage, work with your CPA, work with your accountant to make sure that you do it the right way. Where do I apply? You should start with your bank where you have your business relationship. Later in the slides, I am giving 2 links to an online bank that does not require a business relationship. And one of my Wells Fargo clients has successfully applied to the first link. They are getting a loan, so it's real. Again, the entire loan, if you're playing your cards right, can be forgiven, the principal and the accrued interest. Again, the applications may be submitted through June 30th. We now know that they need to be submitted right away because the funding may be interrupted again. So these are the websites. You will have a copy of this PowerPoint. Diane will distribute it after the presentation. So Lendio is the website that my Wells Fargo client applied to. They're successfully getting a loan. So those are just alternatives to those clients that don't have, where the bank is stopping processing this PPP applications. Sole proprietors, so I want to kind of concentrate on issues that just relate to sole proprietors and independents. There's been some clear guidance from SBA that came last week. Again, I'm just gonna concentrate on the people that are sole proprietors that have no employees. There is a different calculation for the ones that have employees. So basically, step one, you have no more gross receipts. You're completely shut down due to this crisis. Start with unemployment. Apply for unemployment. Your second step is to apply to the Paycheck Protection Program. And then the third step, if you feel that EIDL is a program for you, you will apply for that as well. Remember, if you get the PPP loan, you will have to let your unemployment insurance know that you've gotten that loan, or you might be on the hook for repaying those benefits. So be very careful with that.
Trina,
again,
Trina,
yes.
that's it. So just repeat that for everybody, because a couple of people are, commenting on that. So you have, when you apply for everything,
You apply for
you
everything.
receive one, you let everybody know.
Your unemployment gets backdated, let's say back to February
Mhm.
or beginning of March. And let's say on May 1st or May 15th, you get this PPP loan. You will need to let your unemployment insurance know on May 15th, hey, I gotten this loan, I need to get off unemployment. So you will be getting your unemployment, let's say from March 1st through the date you get the loan, let's say May 15th. So that's a very important point, because if you don't stop it, the state will come after you and ask you to repay those insurance benefits. Again, how much can I borrow? 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs. I will explain that for sole proprietors. You're capped at $100,000 per person. And what I say is you can only receive one PPP loan, so it's important to consider applying for the maximum amount here. Again, I'm self-employed, I don't have employees. What am I qualifying for? So you are a self-employed person if you're a sole proprietor and you report your business income on Schedule C as part of your tax return. Your salary will be determined by your net profit reported on your 2019 Schedule C. So 2019 is very important. They're not going to accept 2018. So some of you that have not filed yet, get with your accountant, get a draft of Schedule C. They will accept that until you get your act together and file it, but they're not going to accept 2018. They're going to look at 2019 tax return. Yes, Diane?
Trina, just because I know you like questions as they go along, because there's so many. On the PPP loan, there doesn't seem to be a written criteria for the calculation on the forgivable part of the loan. If you get money based on a certain number of employees, then only bring back a portion of that staff. Can you still spend the 75% on that reduced staff and be forgiven for that portion of the loan?
No, and I will address that later in the presentation.
All right, good. Thank you.
I have a slide on that, and that's an important point, and it's very important for seasonal businesses such as event businesses.
Thank you.
So moving on, the application started on April 10th. So what I tell my sole proprietors, let's get your act together, let's get this information, get your numbers, and apply right away. So again, what information will be required by the banks? We know that they will absolutely require your 2019 Schedule C. They might also require your 1099s that you've received from your contractors, 2019 bank statements, 2019 bookkeeping records. They might even ask you for your 2020 bank statements just to make sure that you were in business before this crisis. This is your Schedule C. If you're not familiar with this, you will be after applying for this program. That's kind of how it looks. Again, they will accept the draft. And everything will be based on this number on line 31, and I highlighted it. So if this number here is above $100,000, it's maxed out at 100,000. So you will bring it down to 100,000 and calculate your amount that way. What if your amount is 0 or less? For example, if you invested some money into buying equipment or expanding your business, you might run a loss. It is a normal, part of business. Unfortunately, you're not going to be eligible for the PPP loan. It's part of the SBA guidance. You're just not going to get anything if this line is 0 or a negative. Again, quick calculation that you can take with you. You take that number on line 31, you divide it by 12. That's your average monthly payroll amount for the purpose of this loan. Even though you're a sole proprietor, you don't get payroll. We get it. There is no W-2. That's how you calculate your monthly salary per se. You take that monthly salary times 2.5, that's the maximum amount of loan requested. And these are the two numbers that you will need to apply. So once you have those two numbers, go ahead and submit your application and wait till a human calls you back from the bank. Next, I want to address the partnerships and LLCs. The information was not available to us the last time we met. So now there's clear guidance from an SBA that the partners are not to apply themselves, that they need to include their self-employment income as part of the partnership PPP loan. We kind of thought about that. I did announce it in the previous presentation. It did happen. So basically, you know, they're still limited to $100,000. So if you have 3 partners in the partnership, for example, they're all making $150,000 a year, you would add $300,000 for them to the partnership application. What happens if you already filled out an application and you excluded the partners because there was just no guidance and we didn't know how to apply? So what happens to those partnerships? So I want to introduce you to this concept of safe harbor, and John, if he's still around, he can comment on that later. But basically, safe harbor says, you know what, at the time that you applied for the loan, the legislation was not clear. The law was not clear. And now you would like to change your calculation because there is some new information that came into light. And I don't see why a bank would not allow you to do that if you actually get to speak to a human. So that's what I advise my clients that have not done that. Seasonal employers. Like many of you on the call in the event industry. So basically, one of the provisions of forgiveness, it is very clear. It says you cannot reduce the amount of full-time equivalents, okay? And something that Diane has asked, somebody has asked on the call already. So basically, this is the formula. You need to take your average monthly full-time equivalent employees in 8-week period, and you're going to divide them by either one of those denominators. And we're going to talk about that. What's the important part of that? So in the previous presentation, I kind of went over into that of how to calculate full-time equivalents. You basically take all your part-timers in a period, you add them all up, you divide it by a full-time employee's work hours, which is 2,080, and you come up with this, what is called full-time equivalents. It's not a body for body, it's just a mathematical equation. And then once you get that loan, you decide, okay, who am I gonna bring back? I might bring back John, but John used to be a part-timer. You're now gonna offer him a full-time position just to satisfy this full-time equivalency concept. And so at the time that many of my clients have filled out an application, we thought that we have to report an average employee number based on just 2019 employment records. Turned out to be not the case. As a seasonal employee, you can choose one of these calculations. And what I say to my clients, run a calculation for every period and choose the number of employees choose the period that has the least number of employees.
Oh, okay.
It was very simple math, Diane. For most clients, calendar year 2019 is not going to be the best option because it's going to have the majority of employees. So for most of my client, period number 2, January 1st, between January 1st and February 29 this year, produced the least amount of full-time equivalents. And that's what we're going with. Again, just do the math, figure out which one of the 3 periods is going to work for you and use it in your favor. That's something that was not readily available at the time the program offered. Again, just call on Safe Harbor and change the amount of employees because you don't want to bring everybody back. I mean, sometimes you can't. Again, once you get the PPP loan and
Trina, that raises a question too. if you go through the period where you have the minimal amount of
Employees.
employees and for some reason business picks up, can you then use that stimulus check to pay additional people?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's the key here is,
The key is here to come up with the minimum.
right.
And then you can always go up from there. There's
Right.
no
Got it. All
harm in
right. Thank
going
you.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, surprisingly, a lot of my clients already started getting the PPP loans. So once you get the PPP loan, we will move into forgivable stage and work with your CPA on how to use the money correctly. Really understand the difference of 8 weeks period and 2.5 months of the loan amount, which I'll cover in the next slide. But basically, you must spend at least 75% of the loan on payroll costs. Payroll costs can include salaries, health insurance, retirement benefits, all that good stuff. No more than 25% on non-payroll costs like rent, utilities, interest on mortgage. I got a question from a client last night. Can we pay interest on a line of credit that we got? And it turns out that they just got that line of credit, and the answer was no. Your loan had to be in place on February 15th. Your rent had to be in place on February 15th. So you just went out and got a new rental property. Not gonna work. Sole proprietors, be very careful. You must have claimed the deduction for such expenses on your Schedule C. So if you had utilities, you had office rent, you had home office on your Schedule C for 2019, no problem. But if you didn't have it, they're not gonna allow you to just get a new office, get a new utility contract. That's not gonna happen. So that's one of the catches. Again, it's not gonna be a slam dunk process. So work with your CPAs on that. There is no guidance from SBA, but there is a consensus in our profession. Consider opening a separate business checking account when you get that money. So then you have clear record, you can do transfers, you can run payroll through that account. You're gonna be asked for a lot of written evidence so you can get your loan forgiven. Nobody's just gonna be like, well, here's forgiven. You're gonna have to substantiate every single expense. Again, be careful when you're using funds to help pay your mortgage. If you're one of those that works from home, like all of us do right now, there's an allocation that's done by accountants. You can only use that based on the percentage. So it's very important to understand the difference. So you have that money now and you have 8 weeks to spend it correctly, that it's 100% forgiven. But remember, your loan is based on 2.5 months. So you have this inherent difference. You have a lot more money than maybe potentially you're able to spend in 8 weeks. Again, work with your CPA on figuring that out. You might have to bring more employees back. So what happens if I misuse the funds? They will ask you to repay them. You might also be charged with fraud. I am not going to be surprised that we're going to hear more fraud cases happening on the news. So once you get that loan, you will have 6 months of automatic deferment. So you're not going to have to make any payment of principal until 6 months. The interest will still accrue on that amount. So these are just a quick graphic on understanding the stages of PPP. Obviously, determining the maximum loan amount that you qualify for is very important because you might not be able to change your mind later on. So, your accountant might be able to help you with that. Apply for the PPP application. And then once you get that loan, you really need to plan for 100% forgiveness. That's the goal for our firm and our clients. You need to budget the loan proceeds correctly. Again, it's not going to be a slam dunk, easy calculation. It might involve a professional.
Trina, and you mentioned just a little bit ago, the loans are good for 6 months, right? But that's like at this point in time. If and this is the big crystal ball, none of us know, if this curve comes back and this W happens, as Jonathan mentioned before, everyone then things might change again.
Things might change again. So
Right.
again, I'm presenting the information that we know now, as we know before. Things change every week. So as we know more information, we'll obviously communicate.
Right, and here's another one, is there this plan for 100% forgiveness? Is there a place to get the plan to understand?
No, there is no place yet. AICPA, which is the body that regulates us CPAs, will come up with a spreadsheet. They will actually post it on their website. And the name of the regulating body is AICPA. So once they publish it for us, we'll be obviously distributing it to our clients. It's most likely going to be a calculation spreadsheet.
And a couple more before we go on, Trina. How long do we have to use the loan? Is it 8 weeks?
8 weeks.
From when it's received?
When it's received. Eight
Okay. All right.
weeks.
From when it's received.
From the
Another
date
one.
that it's funded.
How best to prove that the PPP is actually used, something jumped, is actually used for payroll? And you just said set up a separate bank account,
Yes.
keep diligent records so that
Yes.
someone says to you, how did you spend that $100? You can say, here.
Yeah. So for
Okay.
example, a client contacted me last night. They did set up a separate bank account, just like I advised. They don't want to change their payroll provider to that checking account because it's obviously temporary. So what I said is run your weekly payroll. His payroll happened to be $9,300 something. And I said, transfer that exact amount from that separate checking account to your regular business account. And then you have the payroll register for that exact dollars and cents that
Right.
you're going to use as a backup for that entry.
Right. Now, are there any?
Diane, this is John.
Oh, okay,
Just
John.
one comment I'd like to make here. I could not agree more with Trina as the importance of keeping those funds segregated and then providing when you're withdrawing those funds to meet payroll or rent or whatever, you should sit down right now and figure out what the 75% is versus the 25% out of that loan that you now have to disperse within 8 weeks in order to qualify it out. This is one of those the IRS form over substance or substance over form. This is both form and substance that you have to meet.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, just keep really good records, date everything, make sure you have receipts attached. Trina, one thing here, just a couple here, is there anything, any guideline on which utilities are covered, or is it just the basic?
It's the basic, and we think that internet is now part of utilities as well. So.
Right. Oh, okay. It says in another comment, it says in the terms of the loan that it must begin to be distributed 5 days after signing the contract. That was from Sally. I don't know exactly which loan. Sally, give me a little bit more and I'll ask Trina. And let me just see, question here. Do payroll costs include the 401k contributions for employees?
Yes. So if your company is one of the good ones and they're helping contribute the employer contributions, it will be included, the employer portion. Employee portion is obviously already included in the salaries.
Okay, let me just relay this too. So Sally says contingencies. SBA issues this authorization in reliance on representations in the loan application, including supporting documents. The guarantee is contingent upon the lender. Number one, complying with all Paycheck Protection Program requirements, including the PPP program guide and the Paycheck Protection Program interim final rule, as amended from time to time. Goes on to say, making first disbursement of the loan no later than 5 days from the date of loan approval and completing disbursement no later than 2 months from the date of loan approval.
So that's actually guideline for the banks. So once SBA approves the loan, they have to distribute it obviously to their client. That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
It's a guidance to the bank. So take away from here, Diane, if there's anything to take away, get ready, apply, don't stress about maybe temporary loss of funding for the program, and also really figure out your forgiveness. It's not going to be as easy process as we thought earlier. This is, again, a quick timeline that the clients can take away with them. I mean, that the listeners can take away with them. 12 months prior for sole proprietors, you know, it's based on your 2019 tax return. Once you get the loan, you have 8 weeks to spend it correctly. And then, for example, if you don't spend it correctly and some of it is denied forgiveness, maybe a couple of $1,000, you have 2 years from the date your forgiveness is denied to repay that amount. Could happen to some clients, especially the ones that don't have, you know, large rents. It's kind of hard to spend the money if you don't have, you know, you don't have that 25% to pay towards the rent. So you will be on the hook for the interest that accrued just on that balance that was not forgiven. So that's just a quick timeline on that. We know that forgiven amount is not going to be taxable for federal purposes. Yay, that's a great, you know, another bonus for that. Most likely it will be taxable to the state though. So you're going to be on the hook for that. I don't think the states are going to not tax it. Quickly, the last part of this presentation is Economic Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL, and Emergency Economic Injury Grant. Again, this is actually a product that was available through SBA before. It's not a new product. It's a loan. You will be required for the tax returns and maybe a credit check. It is administered only through SBA, so you have to apply on the website that I've listed. It's not through your bank, but very favorable interest rates. There's a deferrable period of 4 years. You have a long time to repay it, up to 30 years. Again, this is mostly for people that maybe need capital, you know, to start back up, not really for employee type of related expenses.
But Trina,
Yes.
again, I want to go back to what I heard you say before. You can have one or the other, correct?
You can have both.
Ah, okay,
You can
that's
have
good.
both. So one does not negate the other, just don't have them both for the same purposes.
All right,
So
so here's, okay,
PPP is for employees and paying rent. EIDL is going to be for something else. No double.
EIDL is like running your business.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Here's a couple things. Can you apply with more than one bank for the PPP?
No.
No. Okay.
They will ask you, have you applied for it? So it's one PPP per company. If you're going to be jumping and applying to different places, I think they're just going to look at you, you know.
So the other thing is the best strategy to not pay people now and wait until you get the PPP loan to pay yourself for 8 weeks until you get the loan.
Well, and again, it would depends on your specific situation.
On the situation.
Some
Okay.
of my clients have done exactly that. They couldn't sustain the payroll, and now, you know, they furloughed their employees. The employees were able to join the unemployment system, and then once they get the PPP, they will be bringing them back. If you have enough cash flow to sustain, you know, you don't want to let your employees go, but sometimes you have to.
Right. We have 10 minutes, so I'm just trying to give you the questions as we go along. Thanks.
So this is all the way at the end. So when you're applying for this economic injury disaster loan, I actually went on their website, applied almost till the end so I could capture the screenshots, and that's going to be in that presentation, Diane, that we did with Jim yesterday. Just helping, you know, small businesses apply. A lot of my clients don't have cost of goods sold. You're an independent professional putting on events. You don't have any of that. Just put 0. If you don't, you're not going to be able to move on to the next screen. So that's just a quick tip here. Part of the application asks you, I would like to be considered for an advance of up to $10,000. So go ahead and check yes. What does that mean? So at first we thought that, oh, EIDL is just going to give us $10,000. It's going to be forgiven. We don't have to repay it. We know now that's not the case. It's up to $10,000. So they can give you $2,000. We don't know. And basically whatever you get from this advance, it's considered the grant money that will have to be folded into your PPP for it to be forgiven. So we know now, so there's been a lot of confusion, Diane. How's IDL related to PPP? Just the grant portion is going to be rolled into the PPP, refinanced, and some banks are even asking, have you gotten any EIDL grants, because they know that it's going to be part of the PPP amount.
And if you have the EIDL grant and you're an independent worker, are you still able to collect unemployment until that grant comes along?
You're able to collect unemployment till something comes along.
And then the question is, what's the difference between state unemployment and PUA? And I think you covered that in one of the original slides, right?
I did.
PUA is only pandemic.
So the state has their unemployment amounts, their tables. The state has their own PUA now. So you're able to apply for the state PUA, plus you're qualifying for that extra $600 a week. That's the federal PUA. Again, everything is administered through the state. There's nowhere on the federal website to go and apply. And I want to finish this by a disclaimer. You know, as much as I've prepared for this, we know things are changing by the hour, so there might be some outdated information there. And now, if there's more questions, we can start answering those.
Yes. John, do you have any? Jonathan, are you still on the line? Would you like to make any?
I think Trina, as always, has done a great job of outlining not only the pluses but the minuses and the care that you have to follow. It's really a question now of maintaining your books, your records, and the like. You want to be there in a way that you feel comfortable, your accountant feels comfortable in what you're going to present back for the forgiveness of the loan. And I think most of us look at this as, we want to get the money, we want to be forgiven from having to meet that obligation, but we have to bear in mind too, we've got to play the rules, play by the rules. Part of the problem is we don't know what all the rules are yet. And I think that's the enigma that we all are finding ourselves confronting. My suggestion is, work with your account, work internally, but separate that money out that you get either from EILD or from PPP. With the EILD, the $10,000, if you're going to transfer that over to your payroll protection, do that, but talk to your account, talk to your lawyer as to how that should be done, how you're going to account for it, so you might be able to have that forgiven.
Yeah, every situation is so different. It's the same, but it's different, you know, to clarify it. And just a question for both, going back to unemployment. If my employees file for unemployment, so I am presuming they're furloughed, will this affect what I pay as a business owner moving forward? I am presuming, will my percentage pay into unemployment increase? So well, I guess, let me just read this. Going back to unemployment, if my employees file for unemployment, will this affect what I pay as a business owner moving forward? I'm presuming paying them or paying into unemployment insurance.
You're going to go back to what the state requires.
What the state requires, state by state is different, right, John? Yeah, that's what I was thinking with that.
Yeah, I mean, for example, in California, we have a cap. So once you're over the cap, the state can charge you. Yeah, you will owe the state, but I mean, at this point, like, who cares? You know,
right.
You're not.
Right.
At this
We're
point,
going to tell them
like,
Trina
who
sent
cares?
us.
Yeah.
Pay me now or pay me later.
Yeah. If I'm receiving unemployment insurance and I get called back to work, but also I'm also a sole proprietor, should I apply for PUA? Should I be applying for PUA or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You must apply for PUA so you get the maximum amount, and you'll cross that bridge when you get there, you know?
Right.
Yeah, don't be bashful.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's basically, you know, I in our previous discussions it's confusing, and whether you're listening as a business owner, an independent contractor, an LLC, is every situation is different, but just apply and then speak to the person and work out your own situation. Would you say that, Trina?
Yeah, so basically it's just knowing your rights, knowing that there are options available to you. Don't get overwhelmed by them. Apply in every line and you get to learn information while you're waiting in line. Like for example, for unemployment benefits in California, there's over 4 weeks backlog. You know, New York said they're clearing it. We don't know, but we don't know. But it's like eventually you will get to talk to a human. Eventually you will get help. So there are all these options available. So a lot of my clients, they just get so discouraged because they listen to social media or media news. Oh my God, they run out. I'm like, who cares? Just get your numbers in the, you know, get ready and apply when it's ready. It will be there for you.
Yeah.
Don't get discouraged and don't do, you know, and do nothing, basically.
What we've also found is that in some cases, the communication between the client and the bank on the PPP has been where they transform a number from the bank, sending it in, causing a problem in getting the money coming back from the government. The deal there is you got to double check the paperwork before you submit it. And then also always check with your lender as to what they submitted. So if there is an error, and I've had 2 incidents now where there's been an error of a transformation of a number that has blocked it. Once that was corrected, the money was there, they got the money, but there was a lot of anxiety as they were waiting for it, thinking that they were in line, but the funding had run out. The funding was still there, it just wasn't for the right number. So, you know, don't be discouraged. If you get somebody says you didn't get it yet, push it back and find out why you didn't get it, and then make sure you check the paperwork.
And I just want to comment on the question that I'm seeing in my comment box on Wells Fargo. So someone has asked about Wells Fargo. So if you have applied with Wells Fargo and you have received the confirmation number, there's actually something in writing, that means that you're in line. So, but if you have not, because some of my clients just went to apply and it says closed, so they went ahead and applied on their website. So I'm hoping I'm answering that question correctly. If you're already in line with Wells Fargo, you have some kind of documentation on that, you know, go ahead and wait. That's what I was trying to say. Don't try to apply at a lot of different places. But if your bank is just saying it's closed, then there are online lenders that you can try with them.
Right.
Yeah, credit unions and others, community banks are now getting some preference, or it's supposed to be getting some preference overall. Though if you look at the numbers, I don't know what it was the last count, but it was in a high percentage that the local community banks were getting it. Here in Illinois, I know a lot of lawyers who applied for loans, and they were dealing with little towns like Litchfield, Illinois, and theirs were coming through rapidly, whereas people in Chicago going through Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America were being stacked up and not really moving.
Yeah.
Right. So basically be in touch with your bank, start with your bank for the process of application. In the 2 minutes that we have wrapping up, Trina, you want to give us a couple comments, John, before we leave? And thank you both.
Go forth and do battle.
Yes, go forth and do battle. Right, Trina?
Yes. Don't get discouraged. The money will be there. They'll print more money. That's all it takes.
Well, they don't even have to print it. All I have to do is transfer it.
Yeah, just quick print. That's just gonna.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, this is the thing. Look, we're all anxious. There's so much information. There's too much information out there. It's one of the reasons I like to bring these events to you all, because Jonathan, people like Jonathan, everyone you've heard from today is living this. And Trina, thank you for that AICPA reference too. And just to remind everybody, Trina's PowerPoint will be available, and an additional bonus of 1.5 hours specifically focusing on independence. Trina,
just sole proprietors, walking them step by step in the application process for both PPP and EIDL, those sole proprietors that don't have employees. So we spend like 1 hour on that. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone. So just moving on to our next act, I want to welcome David and Sam and Maggie. Okay, everybody, are you there? So
here.
David, all right, David. Oh, David, great. So David, welcome and thank you. And David, I want to just start with you with this, and just about explain the backdrop behind you and how that grew, huh?
Well, I think Jacqueline Bernstein took a graphics design class.
Yes, well,
She put this together for us and her team. Actually, what this is this represents a small group of the people that we've been meeting with every week on Thursdays. I've been doing a call. This will be our, I think, our 6th week doing a call with industry leaders, owners, and operating managers of large event companies, not just in North America, but we have members that are, or not members, but people that are calling in from Europe and Middle East and Africa. We're getting some good information from our friends in Asia and Australia, but our call is usually while they're all sleeping. It's been a really great group of people for us just to kind of initially commiserate with, but it has turned into a really great source of sharing information and planning and looking forward to, what do we think? Where do we think this is all going, and when do we think it's all going to end, and what are some scenarios around that?
It's interesting, like, because I know, like, even with me, it was, oh, did you hear? So really, when did this start again? How many weeks ago?
Yeah, so this Thursday will be week 6.
6, wow. So how many were on your first call?
I think we had about like 15 or so, and I think we're up to closer to 40 now. As we go through, different members are saying, hey, bring this person in, bring this person in. So there's about 40 people on the list right now from all over the world that are contributing their time and effort and their opinions and advice on this.
That's cool. So David, what do you want to share with everybody? Like, what have you been hearing? What are there's so much, but what have you been hearing? What are the, I mean, we know the situations, but what have you been hearing from everybody that's something that we can all grow from?
Right. And thank you. And I've got a few things I do want to share. First and foremost, I just want to say the one greatest pearl of wisdom I heard today was from Gary, which is truly, we got into this industry because we're all creative. And I've always said that my favorite part about being a creative is not so much designing events or media or any of those type of things. It's creative problem solving. So it's when situations come up that don't look like there's a way out, to always try to figure out that way out. So I want to encourage everybody out there to use your creativity to figure out what is next and what's the short term, what's the long term, how to get to the other side of this. So when we first started, 6 weeks ago, the whole world was still completely different. It had just stopped. We were all thinking it was going to be this 2 to 4 week stop. And like, well, in June, work will start coming back. And then as we started to see our summers go away, and, I have clients just canceling for the entire year, it became apparent that we need to really prepare for the worst and hope for the best always, right? So I know what we're doing, what a lot of people are doing as we talk about this is, how do you look at getting to the other side of 2020? What if 2020 is just a complete loss? How do you get to the other side? How do you get to 2021? And truthfully, when you think about it, 2021, it probably won't be January 1st of 2021. It'll probably be second quarter, maybe even June of 2021 before we really start seeing any sort of meaningful event business really starting to come back, just because as been mentioned here, there should be a dip in cases, and we should see things get better over the summer and the warmer months. But everybody that I've heard from on the medical community is saying that this will come back again in the fall. And I think there's a lot of concern around that and the what ifs, and when it comes back, will we have a quicker knee jerk? Will we say we have to shut down for 3 months? What will that look like? And so there's a couple of different opportunities, because we also identify that there probably is, if anything comes back this year, there probably is going to be this small window between mid-August and early October, right? Where there's maybe a small growing sense of confidence in corporations to start doing meetings. And we've already seen a lot of our people that are canceling their projects, trying to reschedule for in August or September. Everybody's August or September. So what that's going to also create is a challenge with supply and demand, right? If we have, if at Go West we have, say there's 10 major clients that we do 10 projects for, and they're evenly spread out, wouldn't that be lovely? Throughout the year, and all 10 of those clients say, hey, we need you guys in your A team to execute these projects, and we're all rescheduling between August and, beginning of October. We're not going to physically be able to handle that. And so we need to look, and the beauty of these people is like, how do we really start, working together in a truly meaningful, trusting way where I can say, hey, Dave Merrill in Los Angeles, can you handle this project for me with this client? Or, or Jamie down in Florida, can you do this thing for me? And know that next year when world gets back to normal, that's still my client, right? So there's these things that where it's like, well, I want to trust you, but are you going to take my client? So really, we're having these very open, transparent conversations with each other and talking about the elephant in the room, because we need each other and we need to create some sort of way to work together. The agency model piece comes up a lot, but again, it's one of those things where if 50% of us start saying, we're going to start billing our clients for every hour and on the RFP process, all that. If only 50% of us do it, then the other 50% of the people out there are going, well, hey, that becomes a sales tool for them. It's like, well, we don't charge for any of those upfront costs, right? And so it becomes one of these things where we have to start figuring out ways to adapt industry-wide policies around this,
David, just that's it. That is like, oh my gosh, you talk about the elephant in the room. That's the circus in the room, and maybe that is something that we can talk about more about, an alliance of some sort that is best practices. And if you're going to work with a company, like, here's what you get from us, here's the criteria. That's a really good point.
Right.
I mean, moving forward, right?
The good housekeeping seal of approval on this kind of thing, right?
Something,
Right.
Yeah.
Something,
Yeah.
A couple other things I want to bring up is, as one of the gentlemen on the call last week, I believe it was Lee Dunlap from Quest mentioned, as he looked at 2020 at being, almost a complete loss, the way he was forecasting for moving forward was say, okay, if 2020 is a complete loss, do we look at our numbers for 2019, and as we plan for 2021, do we target 70 to 80% of what our revenues were in 2019 as a target to budget to in 2021? Which I thought is probably a good way to look at it. The other thing on the force majeure clause, and I know Jonathan brought this up, I do believe this is going to be the battle of the ages, right? Because now every event company and every vendor wants to create stricter guidelines in their force majeure to protect themselves. And every client is want to do the opposing thing. On the other side is another one of Mahay's cage matches, right? Where, they're going to want to have stricter and looser guidelines on how they can get out of things. So this is going to be a big challenge for us. And one of the most interesting things that has come out of this, which I'm really excited about, is last week we did a virtual concert, and we did a fundraiser for my hometown of Nashville for the creatives and musicians and the event people in Nashville to try to raise money for them. And through that, I got introduced to Eileen and Shannon at the Live Events Coalition. Now, this is a brand new organization, started off as a Facebook group with, I think in the first week they had about 18,000 people join, and they've got many, many more on top of that. But this is a coalition that was formed that is in response to the COVID-19 crisis. And they're pulling together some incredible data that we also need to look as a industry at how we start getting lobbyists, right? Because when you look at the data that the events industry is a $1.1 trillion global industry around the world, about 400 billion of that being just in the United States. In the US, 12 million different jobs are in support of event industry, whether that's hotel workers or event planners or security guys or ticket takers or whatever that is. But 12 million, and those 12 million jobs represent more U.S. workers than telecom, auto, chemical, food manufacturing, and oil and gas combined. And you think that all of those other groups have such strong lobbyists in DC, and we kind of get lumped in as the redheaded stepchild to the hospitality industry and hotels and maybe a little bit on travel. But I think there's a meaningful way that we have to get out there, create an industry body for ourselves, and get out there and get our own people lobbying, because we were the first industry completely shut down. We will be the last industry to completely come back.
Yeah, and you know what? It's an interesting concept, Dave. I've said this for years. We're a young industry, but we're an intrinsic part of business communications, and shifting. Think about this: shifting ourselves to an integrated marketing where we're assimilated with the advertising PR people. It's almost a bigger message because they're used to that. But no, those are really good points. And yes, it's time. It's just time. So don't let me forget this, and we remind everybody in the follow-up resource guide information about the Alliance so that we can.
Coalition.
Yep. So, thank you.
Coalition.
Thank you.
Live Events Coalition, and you can join their Facebook group. Just look them up. Live Events Coalition.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Just stay tuned. I thank you for that. Thanks very much, David. Sam, are you with us? Samantha.
I'm with you.
How's Austin? How is Austin today?
Hot and muggy.
All right. Well, that's okay. Well, it's good to know hot exists. So Sam, you have a pivotal role in Austin with South by, and looking forward to hearing your insight with what's been going on this year with the festival.
Well, I think South by was the first major event in America to cancel. And it wasn't, Coachella and Burning Man have both canceled by order of their own management, whereas South by was canceled by the city of Austin. And as far as force majeure goes, a pandemic isn't included in that clause, but a government shutdown is. So all of those clauses were valid in our contracts. None of us thought it would happen. A petition was circulating, and we were hearing from different clients, they started canceling their events ahead of time because their companies had imposed travel restrictions. So we probably had about 25% of our clients start canceling ahead of time. And I think we had 30 minutes warning that the city was going to shut it down. We had a call with South by Southwest, and man, it was a real hit to the head, that's for sure. You've worked a whole year on this, and all of a sudden it's completely gone. We had been planning a safer event. We had been ordering supplies for hand sanitizing and that sort of thing. But, the cancellation happened on March 6th. So this was still kind of early days. People didn't have a lot of information about how infectious it was. And,
right.
So that's it. I think there's probably 200 to 300 vendors in this town that have just been devastated by this. 3 of our vendors have already gone out of business. Restaurants are closing every day permanently. So when the event business does come back, who are our vendors going to be? It's going to be ones that can survive this. And my whole theory through this whole thing has been, let's all share the hit so that all of us can survive. And, our clients have been really great about the money that we're able to return. If the vendors have gone out of business, I'm not able to get those deposits back.
Everything's such a case by case, but so when you go back to, March 6th or March 1st, your role in Austin is the liaison with many of the venues, right? The warehouses, the parking lot, like where events can take place, right?
Right.
So what was your process when you heard by South by? I mean, were the vendors and the locations already communicating with you, or were you the one that gave them the news? How did that work?
I swear everyone in Austin was glued to their TV for the mayoral press conference, because I don't think anybody was surprised when we called them. So what High Beam does basically is we developed the official day party program for South by Southwest, and that gives their sponsors and their clients an additional means to create an activation or a networking event. And so it's really just enhanced the entire festival, and the official program, official parties are part of the program. They're on the online scheduler. So all of that, yeah, we do a lot of work in parking lots. Hi, Gary. And so I think really everybody knew.
They kind of knew the outcome, but they just needed to hear it officially, right? So what is your role now and the relationship with you now with South by? What are their plans? What are their latest plans?
Well, they are, of course, trying to roll over as many sponsor dollars as possible. You know, they have a no refund badge policy, but I know that they're basically rolling those over or offering reduced rates. You know, this is really difficult because this is your operating capital. This is your payroll. And how do you decide how much to give back without shutting your company down? And so they're walking a real tightrope right now. But some of the best news that's come out of it, Amazon is one of the big clients that was coming. We had a major contract with them that they canceled on their own. But they have sponsored kind of a mini film festival on Amazon Prime, and there's no paywall. But with the cooperation of the South by filmmakers, they're going to be showing the films. So anyone can go on Amazon Prime and do that. And they're also offering a stipend to the filmmakers for that. So it's a bit of a help, and it, you know, it's
something. I mean, do you see, and I mean, I know you don't know anything. You're not the owner of the festival, but do you see the conversations that are happening with the festival, sort of like Gary was pointing out before? What are our options? Like this Amazon is a creative option. Let's do that. I mean, because the festival, just to update me, the festival is rescheduled for.
It's already got the 2021 dates scheduled. Right. I mean, it's scheduled 5 years out at least because of hotel contracts. So, you know, and convention center contracts. So there is going to be a 2021.
The same time frame, right? Like the same. They didn't change the date. Did they?
No, it's usually scheduled over spring break, because when it started in '87, the bars were all dark during spring break, when University of Texas is a large bit of Austin's population. So it's over spring break for UT. And I know that they're going to be doing some hybrid of virtual and regular. And how High Beam is going to fit into that, we don't really know, because we've been the ones who are focusing on the experiences, the in-person experiences that clients were bringing to South by Southwest. So we've got a lot of brainstorming to do to figure out what's next for us and how do we apply our skills to what the new South by is going to look like.
Right. I imagine.
Because I already have a client, so.
Yeah, I can't even imagine where to start. Like, well, yeah, I can imagine. I shouldn't say that. But the thing is, yeah. So, quick observation. Are you aware of anything, or anyone can't? I don't know if Larry's still on, but imagine the cancellation. Sally saying, imagine South by cancellation is an insurance nightmare. And do you have any insight on that?
They don't have cancellation insurance that was going to cover them for this at all. There's no pandemic cancellation insurance.
They have to call Larry now, right?
Yeah. I guess so. But I know that their insurance company, you know, they insure their outdoor stage, which is where they have free performances for 4 nights, and they insure that for weather. And the one year that there was lightning within 6 miles of Austin, so you have to evacuate the premises. It's all outdoors. And the insurance company argued with them and said, well, there was no lightning at the airport. And that the airport is where we monitor the weather. So they wouldn't even pay up for that. So
Right. Well, everything is a case by case, as we've been learning. But I think, look, we're all kind of following these major events, right, David? Would you say, like, well, I mean, look, Nashville, huge events. Like, how do you music festivals? What do you do?
Bonnaroo, you've got Bonnaroo, right?
Yeah, we do. Well, we had Bonnaroo. Yeah, what we had been saying in this weekly call, and it was kind of my benchmark was, what happens when Major League Baseball comes back? What happens when NFL comes back, and and then what happens when Broadway opens up in New York? What happens when Broadway opens up here in Nashville?
Right.
And that should give our clients a little confidence or concern whether people want to gather. And it's not looking great for baseball. It's not looking great for the NFL. The NFL mentioning last week that they're not going to open any stadiums until they can open all the stadiums. So if one city with one team can't open, then nobody opens. And the governor of California followed up by saying he didn't think anybody would be in an NFL stadium in August or September of this year, which it's scary.
It's totally a case by case. I mean, I just was reading, and oh my gosh, I'm going to get the country wrong, but I think it was Denmark the young children went back to school, and they're experimenting with the 6 feet. Yes, yeah. 6 feet. It was a visual for me of what we've been discussing might happen if we have a meeting in a ballroom, and a half round that was typically for 5 or 6 becomes for 2 or 3, and then
Yeah, we're gonna have to completely change how seating looks, which then is going to be a completely different configuration. Does that ballroom now work for that capacity? Are we going to have the capacities? I mean, the best thing that comes out of this is we'll no longer have a 60-inch round being used as a 10 top.
Yeah, no, not for the short time anyway, right? And all of our friends in the rental furniture business, a sofa will be for 1,
Yeah. Exactly. But we have to look at Purell stations. Somebody else mentioned earlier about temperature checks as people are coming in. My wife and I, we were in Las Vegas just as this, I think it was March 6th or 7th, we were out there. And just as we were leaving, we heard that they were starting to put in this before they shut down. The Wynn was going to put in infrared sensors at all the entrances that would be able to monitor the temperature of all people walking into the building. And if anybody came in with an elevated temperature, they were going to have to ask those people to leave the building.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see that technology, coming into place for us as well.
Yeah, it's in fact, one of my students is in Korea, and she was telling me that, and this is how we learn what they're doing now, because that's Korea, is if you go to a restaurant, you have to have a clearance card from the health department, and they take your temperature as you're walking into the restaurant. I'm trying to picture that happening in New York, but anyway, let's just move on and get Maggie to join us now. Maggie, are you here?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Maggie. Hi, thanks for joining us today. So Maggie, everyone sits on the edge of their seats, kidding, hearing the millennial perspective. You dove into this industry at a good time. So tell us what you're going through now, and what are you sharing with your clients as a consultant?
Sure. So most of my contracts actually as a consultant have been suspended, and my new business initiatives have been postponed a bit to address the immediacy of everything that's happening. So what I've been doing is just offering a different perspective, offering my clients support when they need it, saying, just personal, how are you? If there's anything that I can do to help, please let me know. But one of the interesting conversations we're having now goes back to what was discussed previously. My consulting is mainly focused on helping event companies improve their sales processes. So instead of really talking about how to sell, it's talking about how to communicate with your clients and how to communicate, if it might be line item by line item, the value that you're offering them and how important events are.
Yeah, so from where you sit now, are your clients millennials, and what are you speaking about now in terms of the future and what you envision from where you sit, how events are going to
Well, I think
Ellen.
that to answer one of your questions is how millennials view the current situation. And I think it's an important conversation to have, because as you discuss populations in terms of a generation, it provides insights and important information about the formative events that happen, such as COVID-19 crisis, and how they influence different worldviews. And so I hope that in answering this question, I can help all of you today just to have a better understanding of the values and the goals of millennials as a generation as we get through this experience together, which is also what I'm providing my clients as well. And so I just want to start with a brief overview of the millennial generation and also highlight some misconceptions of the group. So to start, I just would like to set the record straight about how old millennials are. Currently, millennials are 24 to 39 years old. And so this means that the oldest in the generation are hitting a milestone next year when they turn 40 years old. And millennials are sandwiched in between Generation X, who's currently 40 to 55 years old, and Generation Z, who's currently 10 to 23 years old. And so the millennial generation spans 15 years. And just like any other generation, a 24-year-old is different than a 39-year-old. And if we put that into perspective a little bit, if we look at the older millennials, they were 22 to 27 years old when they were first starting out in their careers, and then the Great Recession of 2008 hit. And on the other side, we have the younger millennials who entered their careers 10 years later in 2018, when unemployment was its lowest in 50 years. And so they had far greater career opportunity than did the older millennials just 10 years earlier. And I think that difference is a good example of the differences between the youngest and the older members of a generation. And so in the middle of the generation, I graduated high school in 2008, and then I entered the workforce in 2012. And like other middle millennials and the younger millennials, this time right now is the first economic and the first financial crisis that we're experiencing as working professionals. And I also want to communicate that my third point is millennials have been branded as irresponsible during this pandemic, and many people in the generation find it to be a bit confounding. I, along with many other millennials in my generation, have been self-quarantined for going on 5 weeks now. And during the early part of the quarantine a few weeks ago, I found a tweet that I think clearly demonstrates how millennials are viewing this situation and what they are doing during this time. And so I'd like to share it with you. It reads, "Millennials are not partying. We and our anxiety issues are holed up, working from home, watching Hulu, and yelling at our parents not to go outside. It's Gen Z that you want." And I can completely relate to this because it is, in fact, what I'm doing. And I'm glad to report that 84% of millennials are doing the same thing. So I just want to break that tweet down a little bit and share the reality of the majority of the millennial generation during this crisis. So to start, millennials, most of them are not partying, and we were not partying. The older generation has young children of their own and they're established in their careers, and the younger millennials are just starting in their careers and frankly might not even have enough PTO to take 5 days consecutively off in a row. And so while the early articles and the headlines claimed that millennials were intensifying the situation and harming others, the narrative categorized college students who are currently Gen Xers as millennials. And so you wonder, what are millennials doing right now? And I think the number one thing that millennials are doing is worrying about their parents. millennials are afraid for their parents who are boomers and in some cases older Gen Xers, but that population is considered an at-risk group. And so we're worried about them, but we're also frustrated because we're trying to get them to understand that COVID-19 is a big deal. And as the first time as millennials, this is the first time we are confronting the aging and the mortality of our parents. And millennials were always a stressed out generation. This situation is no different. Millennials are called the worry generation, and others try to, or I guess they don't understand about why there isn't such a dramatic shift in the outlook of this situation amongst millennials. And it's mainly because millennials are already so anxious. My husband and I are both millennials, and we use this concept we call worry dollars. So when a situation comes up and we start to worry, it helps us to focus on the worry, to put it in perspective, and to then make a decision if the situation is actually worth worrying about. And
yeah,
so,
well, Maggie,
yeah.
Can I give you some boomer advice and
Yeah.
start partying more? Okay.
Well, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
All right, good. Thank you, because you're making me worried now. So,
Well, I guess I'm representing the population well then.
there you go.
But it just, I think the last point here in the tweet is that millennials have been trying to and pushing their companies to work from home for quite some time. And so this opportunity is providing millennials the chance to show boomer bosses that we are, productive and efficient and perhaps more creative when we have the option to work from home. And so I urge everyone watching today to recognize that work from home and the option to work from home is becoming more standard operating procedure.
Well, thank you for that perspective. I'm going to invite David and Sam in with comments, because from an event point of view, and it's great working at home. And of course, I grew up working in an office, and we all have different perspectives on it, because socialization is obviously key. Dave, you have any insight to share with us with Maggie?
Yeah, I think what she brought up, it's home to me very specifically, because I've had this company for 35 years now, and I'm and I'm sure any of my team that are watching this will love this, but I've been the guy it's like, what, we're open from 9 to 5. These are our office hours, and this is when I expect people to be in the office, right? And we have they can work from home a day a week or things like that, and these were our policies. And I was really, really all about making sure the team was together and things like that. And to see how our team has come together in this virtual environment, especially over the last 5-6 weeks, because we had the awesome tornado 2 weeks before the whole world fell apart. So we've been in a weird space a little bit longer than everybody else. But yeah, we've completely, as Mahay said, we had to completely take a look at what are we paying in rents and all of our buildings, and think, is it really worth it? We're functioning very, very well like this, and learning more and more tricks each week. So I agree with the millennials. It's hard for me to swallow that and say that, but I agree with the thought that the millennials are right. We are actually.
I know how you feel, Dave. I know how you feel, David. I know. But you know what? Here's the look. On a little light note, which we all need. Maggie, my mother always said, "Wait till you get older." So you pointed out your generation now is what? What is it, Gen? I teach the 20-year-olds. So what am I teaching? I'm teaching Gen what?
Gen
yeah.
Z.
So you just blame Gen X. So welcome to the club.
Gen Z. Yeah.
Gen Z, right?
Gen Z. Gen
No,
Z.
Gen Z.
10 to
Yeah,
23.
Gen Z. So anyway, listen, but I wanted to put this discussion together because this is the future audience for our events. And so the concept, and I say this to you, Sam, like the concept of working at home and being at home, and yes, we're all adjusting. We're adjusting to the option of virtual, face-to-face and human communication, no question, because we're nonverbal communicate, 85 to 90% is nonverbal communication. So Sam, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, South by is all ages, right, Sam? What do you think?
Yeah, it is pretty much all ages except for infants and toddlers. But as far as our team goes, I know we've got a limited work from home option, but there's so much creativity that happens when they're brainstorming, and I can't ever give that up. And it's just not the same virtually, or we haven't figured out how it can be the same virtually. So there's times, when we're in the beginning creative process of an event where it's better to have them here. And then like in the few months before South by gears up, we've already got all the creative parts done and we're just doing the details. That's when a lot of them choose to work from home, and that's perfectly fine. They don't need to be here. But I don't think I can ever give up having them here. I know that right now we're not that busy. And I've already told them, you're working from home, but don't feel like you owe us 40 hours a week. We don't have any work for you. So don't feel guilty. Go do your laundry, go walk your dog.
Right.
If we have something to let you know.
Well, yes and no, because I'd say this to you is, and this is going to be our next series, is because now is the time for innovative thinking. And you bring up a good point, Sam, because we're all home, we're working virtually, but this whole concept of ideation and creative thinking, and I'm with you. I mean, there's nothing like, and Dave, you chip in here, there's nothing like the spark of being in a room when you come up with that aha moment, I remember my friend Linda, who worked at Kaplan Thaler, when she said her staff, in a moment of complete exhaustion, came up with the Aflac duck. Because Aflac, someone said Aflac wrong, and it sounded like Aflac, like a duck, and a boom, the whole thing. But it's a combination of things now, isn't it? What are you thinking, Dave?
Yeah, and you have to take, what are the tools that you have to play with? And so, a great example is, I do this work with this great spoken word artist, and we do live events, and we do video content in studio and outside. And he just wrote a new piece that he premiered last week, and we want to shoot that. And so we're shooting it as soon as this call's done. We start shooting it all tonight and tomorrow, but we're doing it all on Zoom channels and recording it with different people, and just figuring out how do we still create meaningful content when we're in Nashville, he's in Los Angeles, we have to shoot people in New York, and we're just figuring that out. It's like, how do we create something that doesn't feel forced, still feels authentic, but still provides an excellent product? So
right. I mean,
creativity is at the core of who we are, and we just have to use that in everything to dig out of this.
Yeah,
Diane, I think the key here too is, millennials are social. We love the face-to-face. We want to be face-to-face. We want to be meeting. It's a core part, that connection, and also the mentorship from people is what millennials love. And so I think the key difference here is the option to work from home. And just having 1 or 2 days a week and having that option out there, millennials are pushing for that.
I got news for you, Maggie. So am I. All right. I mean, I like my flexible time too, because I think the point is this, is just flexibility. When you're in a busy season and you have work to be done collectively, you do what you have to do. When you're not, and I know, and Dave and Sam, and I could say this as a business owner myself, as long as you get your work done now, you get your work done. So everybody has a unique situation. But you were here too, Maggie, because you started at such a challenging time in the business, and to go out on your own. So it's going to be very good for you. This time for all of us, we're changing. Any last thoughts, Dave, Samantha? Any last thoughts, Sam?
I have one last thought, and when you talked about partying, I just want to expand on that a little bit, because I think it's important. I think this is going to leave us on a high note here. But a foundational component of the millennial generation is our desire for meaningful experiences. Millennials spend more money on experiences than any other generation, and this is great for hospitality, tourism, and events. And while currently the financial uncertainties of the pandemic are are halting millennial spending, and millennials are cutting back in a lot of ways. One way they aren't cutting back is on travel. And in my millennial network, a lot of my friends are actually buying cheap domestic airfare right now. And it's for 6 to 12 months down the road, understanding that that also might have to be rescheduled. But this means that millennials will be the first generation to initiate travel when stay-at-home orders release, and also the experiences that come with the travel. So the events, the concerts, the sporting events, the dining out, the festivals. And so this leisure travel segment is what will help the economy and also destination cities emerge from this pandemic.
Very good point, and it's a great point to wrap up on. Dave, a quick thought before we wrap up.
Just a couple things that, obviously, just to hammer home that point, we have to, as an industry, come together in solidarity and figure out how we can start charging for our time on the front side, because how many of us have heard our clients come to us and say, can you just put together a bill for the hours that you've put in so far and send me that, right? And my response on every one of them was, that's not how our business model works. The other thing is, virtual is going to be here to stay. So even when events come back, I think 90% of every event is going to have a virtual component to it. So even conferences that used to have 5,000 people may only have 1,000 people and a bunch of people virtually. So you have to think about how you're going to integrate that virtual and how you're going to make those people feel special and engaged that aren't in the room with you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
Sam,
you.
one last thought. Sam, we're all going to be calling you for tickets when South by opens, so
That's
get
right.
ready. Huh?
I'll get my comp database out.
All right.
I think that when this is over, and it's going to be over gradually, I think people are going to embrace face-to-face interactions. And I think the event industry, there's going to be some who are scared to show up, but I think people are going to rush to get back to events and to anything where there's human interaction. I think they'll be glad to come back.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you. The vision. I remember the famous scene from World War II in Times Square with the sailor
Right.
embracing his girlfriend. I mean, I'm looking forward to that day of collective celebration. Although it may come in phases. Anyway, thank you, the three of you. Thank you very much for the conversation, and we'll give a shout out to the Alliance.
Coalition.
I knew I was testing you there. Okay.
Yeah. Live Events Coalition.
Thank you, everybody. All right, everyone. Yeah, well, listen, get ready to party, and thank you for that comment too. We're all looking forward to a celebration. And on that note, I want to welcome Andy and Angus from Song Division. You're with us. Hey, Andy.
Hi, Diane.
Andy, so looking forward to hearing, and Angus, great to see you.
Angus is where the party's at.
Hey, I thought, what a perfect segue into this conversation, right?
I'm at the Natural History Museum. He's in a bar in Manhattan.
Well, listen, that sounds good to me. Nothing heals like music. We've been personally, I've been glued to all the concerts and Facebook and the people from their living room, and it's what gets us speaking to one another again, doesn't it, Andy? So share some thoughts on that, the healing power of music.
It does. And I guess, they had the big world concert on the weekend, which, Lady Gaga brought to everyone, which I enjoyed despite some critics online. And I think music, in terms of healing, it can come across a little bit light and fluffy for some people. So I thought I'd start with, I don't know if anyone out there saw last week in the news that there was a scientist from MIT. There's a group of scientists who are actually mapping the protein chains from COVID-19 to music using artificial intelligence. And they're using it actually in search for the vaccine. So they can actually map it out. They can see inconsistencies and patterns, and they're using it as a serious tool. So in the end, music will save the day for the vaccine. So there you go. On a more general note, I guess, at Song Division, if people aren't aware of who we are, we unite organisations around their purpose using the science of music. And the reason we say the science of music, I guess, is is kind of, to simplify it, it's a battle between hormones. There's the cortisol hormone that most of us are aware of, which is the stress hormone. And then there's oxytocin, which is the hormone that actually gets us into the part of our brain, which I'll go into a bit more detail, the part of our brain where we can connect with people, so empathy, we can be strategic, we can be creative, and that's the part of the brain that we all want to be in when we're putting on live events or virtual events or just living in general. So music can help us with that. So I guess music is more, I would put it more in the mental health assistance category than the light and fluffy. Cortisol we're all aware of. You know, you've all heard of the amygdala, the fight or flight, the reptilian part of the brain, which is where.
Whoops.
You don't need that from me. You should
No.
well safe. But and I won't go into too much detail on that, but you know, you've all heard the example of you know, we get pumped full of cortisol, and it was meant to from our history is meant to help us sort of run away from the pending threat of a tiger in the bush, which doesn't help us much when we get that same stress level from office politics, work pressure, living at home under close quarters with partners and homeschooling and what have you. And then the opposite of that is the oxytocin. And so how do we create more oxytocin? You know, anthropologists believe that the creation of music is what actually brought communities together in the first place. So apes and chimps form social bonds by picking fleas off each other. And as Diane, I know we've been talking about hairdressers, but it's also maybe a connection why we all have good conversations with our hairdressers, because we spend so much time with them playing with our hair. But that touching of each other actually releases oxytocin, and that's how you form social bonds sort of outside of your immediate family. And so, you know, the history of society is that once we went from, you know, families to tribes to towns to cities, is that the creation of music as a collective is a way of interacting with more than the immediate people around us, so that we release this oxytocin and we feel comfortable in those groups. So the creation, listening to music is one thing, and that releases serotonin and oxytocin. The creation of music is sort of the next step. It really gives us a good dose of that. And you can get that by singing in a choir. There's been a lot of couch choirs going on online at the moment. Learning an instrument. There are some amazing apps out there to learn how to play the piano or sing, and playing in virtual bands. So the creation of music, which is what Angus is going to help all of you do at the end, is try and give everyone a little dose of oxytocin at the end of the session.
I was on mute because I didn't want you to hear the music in back of me. No, I'm teasing. But Andy, can you give us some recent examples of how you and your team have used music during the lockdown?
What was it, Diane? Led Zeppelin or Drake? What were you listening to?
Yeah, Mozart.
Mozart, very good. Good choice.
I do. I just want you to know, Andy, I do play Mozart. The Mozart study music. I put it on for 3 hours every day. That's my discipline to work.
I can't listen to. I think a lot of people think I listen to music all day. I can, when I'm working, it has to be instrumental music without a drum beat or a vocal.
Yeah.
So generally, classical music is what I listen to when I'm working. It also helps with your alpha brainwaves as well. So there is a lot of science to it. But in terms of what we've been doing over the last 5 weeks, we started. I mean, obviously, like everyone else on this call, all our live events got cancelled, and we're in the live event business. And we operate globally, so we had events cancelled all around the world. But pretty much straight away, we started doing free happy hours for the markets that we operate in. So it's open to the community, and so we have a lot of people from the meetings and events industry, but also family, friends, colleagues, you know, just people out there. And so we've been running those in Australia, Singapore, UK, Europe, and the US. And what they've been is just a really fun hour hosted by our amazing musicians like Angus Clark, who I'll introduce properly in a moment. So there's performances, there is like a rock and roll game show, quizzes, competition. People win. Their prizes are generally an Insta hit where they win a song written about them or their business from one of our musicians. So they've proved really just again, there's nothing too serious about it. Like, you know, the work that we do normally is very team building focused or interactive, you know, team building for 20 people or interactive general sessions for up to 10,000. So it's somewhere on that spectrum between team building and interactive entertainment. But
I know, but Andy, you say there's no, you know, it's not complicated, but you know what? It is. And the reason, you know, I majored in a double major. And I'd say this to you because part of it was developmental drama, and under developmental drama was music therapy.
Absolutely.
I know what you do at our major industry shows. So you bring so much joy to people. And like I say, it's almost that, it's that nonverbal language. But yeah, I'm interested to hear what you've been doing with the frontline workers, right?
Yeah, well, and on that front, the main thing with these online versions is that the main thing people are looking for, rather than the team building or trying to get a message across, which is sort of in the normal world where we operate, is purely for connection and just being in the same room together, interacting with each other, interacting with musicians and creating music is creating those connections and is a real reprieve. We had one, you mentioned Frontline, we had a event a couple of days here with Amua Family Services, which is the main kids charity in Hawaii. And their psychologists and social workers have been looking after all the kids of the frontline workers. And so there's a lot of stress involved. No one slept for the last 5 weeks. And they called on us just to deliver a really lightweight, fun hour where people could just interact with each other. And again, it is the universal language, whether it's Billie Eilish or Slayer or whatever your vice is in music, we can all connect through music. So it's proven very, and the big surprise with us was we know how it all works live. And I know David just put on a fantastic showcase of the Nashville talent, the fundraiser. It still is having an impact online. We're all looking forward to we all want to go back to South by Southwest, right. Sam, we love South by Southwest, but it still does have an impact on people and on their mental health online.
Yeah, no, I know you do great work, and from a corporate point of view, independent, any events that it's that surprise element, and that just that you have your pulse literally on the event, so that the music is then customized to reach the people and be part of the messaging and the whole thing. I mean, I don't know how much more you want to add, Andy, before
I think rather than listening to me, I thought if we go to Angus, Angus runs Song Division USA. He's the general manager. He's my partner, been my beautiful partner for the last 12 years in the US, and he moonlights on the side when he's not running things for Song Division. He goes and plays lead guitar for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which sells about 1 million tickets a year, and he plays the odd gig with Cher as her lead guitarist. So he knows what he's doing, and he's in Song Division's bar in New Jersey. So I think he's
Angus,
for everyone.
What more can I say, Angus? I had tickets for Trans-Siberian in Chicago, and I forget why I couldn't make it, but I'll see you at the next one for sure. So you want to give us some musical healing right now?
Yes, I've been, so Andy and I were actually texting back and forth throughout the conference with ideas and little takeaways from all the different presentations. And part of the thing that's so great about using music is that it helps these things stay with us. And there was so much great information over the course of this entire event that I'm sure I encourage everyone to follow up with the various presenters and their various websites and presentations that I know some of are available elsewhere or through you, because a lot of it was very specific. So I took some notes, and I have a couple lyrics maybe people could help me with. I had something about when we're talking about insurance, there's this everybody wants a COI. And I don't know if there's something we can rhyme with COI, or about the importance of who you get the COI from, and so on and so forth, and what it says on it, which boxes are checked and stuff like that. A piece of the pie, says John.
I was going to say, do you want? So we're requesting chats, everybody. All right. So we need people to give us a COI rhyme. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, put it in the chat box.
Okay,
John
everyone.
already offered up piece of the pie, which I like.
Pretty cool. I don't want to die.
John's got all of them. And then and there was wonderful stuff about safe harbor, which is a great rhyming word. If anyone
have
has
another one,
anything that
Angus.
rhymes with harbor, that would be
Yeah.
a
We've
good.
got piece of the
I-
pie. I don't want to die, and I want to know why. All right. Oh,
Thank-
wait, they're coming in now. Might not get it. but we
Jacqueline
can
Bernstein,
try.
shout out to Jacqueline. Help us not cry. There you go. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Cindy, I'd like to see my barber.
The end is
Ooh.
nigh. The end is nigh. Huh? Okay.
I like, we all need, how do we find a safe harbor? Right now, I'd like to see my barber. I think that's a great one, Cindy. That's a good call. And so, okay, and then I'm trying to think of what I really like this line. We're having a cage match over force majeure. I thought that was very poetic. I think David came up. It was either David or the other gentleman from the more of the insurance side. I thought that was hilarious.
Yes, Larry Cosio. Yes, yeah.
And
You've got a
and then-
YOY coming here, Angus. You've got a YOY.
YOY. That's easily singable. I like that. And then there was the notion that we're the first industry down and the last one back. I thought that was an important statement. And big shout out from Jacqueline, much appreciated. I've developed these skills doing Instagram Live, responding to comments as I'm talking on the
I was going to
camera.
ask you, so you don't need me here. You got your chat. Let's all find a cure, right, Angus?
So, but okay, we've got some great stuff. I'm gonna get on my singing mic, so I sound kind of like I'm in a swimming pool. Now, is that too much? I think it's just great. Okay, what I want to talk about now is the chorus. And for the chorus, Diane, I went with you. I went with the notion of invisible, invincible. I think that it's great. I think you almost wrote your own first hit song with that. So, so for the chorus, my idea was, this is the time, this is the place, gonna look this challenge square in the face, which came up during the meeting. Someone mentioned that. I thought that was a great phrase. And then when you feel like you're invisible, get together and find out you're invincible. I'm just going to let it sink in for everybody. Just take a minute. You'll be fine. I know. That's the tingle you get when you bring music into the picture and you make things rhyme. You start to realize these things. Now, COI, make me cry. I like that one. I'd like to see my friends and family, my oh my. All right. Don't fight it, just supply. Ooh, I like that too. All right. I'm going to use one of these because the one I had for everybody wants a COI, I had to add the word baby to it, and it made me feel self-conscious about it being, an inappropriate term. I had everybody wants a COI, baby. Don't mean nothing unless you get it straight from the agent. And it didn't really rhyme anyway. So everybody needs a COI. And my friends want to know what's my ROI. And my clients want to know what's my ROI. Let's do that one. All right, good. That comes from Angela Caraway. All right. My clients want to know.
Isn't
what's
that
my
the
ROI.
truth, though? Yep.
What's that?
I said, isn't that the truth?
Exactly. All right, and then we're going to go. And my clients want to know what's my ROI. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation. We are now going to perform the song. This is the Invincible Invincible anthem for C19. If you put yourselves on gallery view, or you can put it on Spotlight and watch me perform, or you put it on gallery view and everybody, can clap along while on mute and stuff like that. It'll make it extra fun for me. All right, here we go.
When we made the call, read the fine print, and know it all. Everybody wants a COI. My clients want to know my ROI in all of this. We all need partners. How do we find safe harbor? We need help to figure it out. 'Cause I'm gonna give Trina a shout. This is the time. This is the place. Gonna look this challenge square in the face. When you feel like you're invisible, get together and find out you're invincible. Who's gonna pay for all this mess? Basic form, broad form, and the special form, yes. Direct physical loss covered by perils gets you interrupted income with no errors. Having a cage match over force majeure, hard to get a win-win, that's for sure. First industry down and the last one back. We all take the hit, then we get back on track. This is the time, this is the place. Gonna look this challenge square in the face. When you feel like you're invisible, get together to find out you're invincible. This is the time, this is the place. Gonna look this challenge square in the face. When you feel like you're invisible, get together to find out you're invincible, yeah. Find out you're invincible. Invincible. Get together to find out you're invincible. Find out you're invincible. That's it. Unmute yourselves so I can hear a thunderous round of applause from everyone.
Angus, thank you so much. That was just perfect. What a great way to wrap up the day. Andy, thank you. Thank you. Angus,
Thank you, Diane.
what can I say? You rock. Everybody on this phone call does. I mean, I just want to thank the speakers today. I want to thank all our supporting partners. I want to thank music for healing our lives always. I mean, you guys are invited back. All right. Don't forget the Search Foundation. I'm wearing this little heart because that's what Search is all about. The special events in need. And also just another shout out for the Live Events Coalition. Everyone, post pictures of your favorite faces behind events. So faces behind events. Hashtag faces behind events and women behind events. So thank you, Eileen and the coalition. Thank you, everyone. For those of you who would like, Jim, are you with us?
Indeed, I am.
You back?
I'm here.
All right, Jim. So everyone, Keep on meeting virtually. Go outside and wave to your neighbors, stick your head out a window, hug yourself for a few touch points every day. And thank you for participating. Our next event is on May 5th, and it's for everyone. It's called Home Office Realities, Optimizing Your Performance and Strategy. And it will